So today, we have a very exciting series of presentations for you. And we're going to start talking about the Fanshawe Guarantee with Rebecca Summerfield, who is part of our careers team. So I'm going to hand it over to Rebecca. Thank you.
Thank you, Caitlin. Good morning, everybody, or good evening from wherever you are. It's nice to see a lot of your faces. We miss doing this sort of stuff, but thank goodness for technology, right? So I hope you guys all had a really great day yesterday. I'm not going to take up too much time this morning. I'm going to talk about the Fanshawe Guarantee. So the Fanshawe Guarantee is something not new. We've always guaranteed exceptional service for all of our students. But right now, in light of this post-pandemic time, we want to make sure that all of our students are still in it for the long haul, because we are. So we are here to make sure that you get all of the support that you absolutely need. There's a lot of different departments that are here to help you and to make sure you get to the goal. So whatever your goal is by attending Fanshawe, we want to make sure that you can satisfy that goal. So I'm going to try to share the screen. You can find our Fanshawe Guarantee on the Fanshawe College website. Let's see if this works. Does everybody see that on the screen? Okay, good. Excellent. So I'm going to talk about the student support guarantee. So we are here for you. Even though a lot of us are working remotely, that doesn't change the fact that we are here to help. You can contact any one of us. So my name is Rebecca Summerfield, and I am the career services consultant for a couple of programs. So I take care of supporting the students in the School of Public Safety, in the School of Tourism, Culinary Arts and Hospitality, as well as the School of Community Studies. So that doesn't mean, though, if you're not in those programs, that you can't be helped. So part of our guarantee is that each one of you have somebody from my department that can help you to bridge that gap between your school experience and the world of work. So career services consultant, every single one of you have a career services consultant that is dedicated to your program and is dedicated to helping you one-on-one with resumes, cover letters. If you're not quite sure what you want to do with your diploma, we can help you figure out what your next stage of your career is. We can do personality assessments. There's a lot of different things that we can do for you, but just know that you're not alone. We are here to make sure that all of your questions are answered. Looking for work here in Canada, I'm sure as you found yesterday, is a lot different than it is for looking for work around the world. And we want to make sure that you're doing it properly, because we don't want you sending out resumes that aren't going to help you be successful. We want to make sure that you're successful from the get-go. And if you find what you're doing isn't working very well, you come back to us, we figure out a new plan, and we try again. I've had all students be successful as long as they keep trying. So you may not get the first, second, or third opportunity, but if you keep trying and you keep taking our suggestions, I can guarantee you that something magical will end up happening as long as you do the work yourself as well. Then we also have co-op consultants. So the co-op consultants, you have access to them if you have some sort of experiential work placement as part of your program. So co-op, placement, those sort of terminology is what you'll hear. But if you are in a co-op designated program, you will also have a co-op consultant. So the way I like to say it is career services is here for everyone. Co-op is here for the co-op students, but any one of us here can make sure that you get the information that you need. That's part of our Here For You promise. So according to our website, you've got questions, we've got answers. We commit to personally responding to all phone and email inquiries within 24 business hours. If we don't know the answer, we commit to finding it and won't leave you hanging, which means if you contact me, but your question is not in my area of expertise, I will still make sure that I get you in contact with the very right person. So you're not going to contact me, ask me a question, I say, no, I can't help you, and that's it. I will make sure that I will find that person that you need to connect to make sure that you have all of the information to be successful. We're also extending our customer service hours in our student services hub. So we do have a student services hub for the next few weeks. We are dedicated to making sure that people are available for our students. And for our international students, we've actually extended the hours for the international call center because we are mindful that we are all on different time zones. So it's now open Canada time or Ontario time, Monday through Friday from our time, 5:30 a.m. till 4:30 p.m. The number is on the website, but I'm sure somebody can maybe put it in the chat line if you're not aware of it. Our international student life coordinators will help you navigate immigration hurdles, study permits, work permits, and all sorts of things that are very unique to our international student population that a lot of our domestic students have never had to go through. So even though my area of expertise is definitely not international issues, my area of expertise is helping our international students. And I'm sure you heard from the alumni panel yesterday, there's a lot of students who come to Fanshawe who are absolutely terrified and not quite sure what they're going to do. And by tapping into the services that we provide for students, they can turn that around. It'll feel like you're not alone anymore. We don't want you to feel like you're the only one experiencing whatever feelings you are feeling. So everybody's nervous right now. People are not quite sure what this is going to look like. One of the skills that you learn as a college student is to be resilient. So getting through this pandemic time and gaining more education here in Canada will show employers that you're personally dedicated to being resilient. So if you can get through this time, in this challenging time, I promise you, you can get through anything. And we want to make sure, again, that you have all of the information at your fingertips. So some of the other things that my department will help with, I mentioned the resumes, cover letters. We have interview software that will allow you to practice your interview skills before getting in front of an employer. With you guys not being here in Canada, the job market does look a little bit differently. Not to say nothing will happen. However, we do have to be mindful. So we want to make sure that we're spending this time now getting you ready to be successful for when the borders open up and we can bring you over here. I'm sure there's some positions that can be done remotely. I don't want to lead anyone on the wrong information. So we are learning this new reality alongside you. But again, I promise that my little neck of the woods is all career-based. You come to Fanshawe because you want a career. I want to make sure that you're getting the information and the education and the experience that you're required to get into the next phase of your life. And finally, we also have the highest graduate employment rate in Ontario. Last year, we were #1. We had just over 90% of students gaining work in their field within 6 months of graduation. There's no other college that can say that they were that successful. And I know that we can credit it to the amazing work from the people that I work with. I have an incredible team. I've worked on a lot of teams over the years. I have to say I've never worked with such a professional, dedicated, and passionate team as with the international studies, as well as the career and co-op services. So again, if I can't help you, then I will make sure that we get you in front of the person that can help you. Things aren't perfect. So if you've reached out to somebody and you have found that you haven't gotten back within that 24-hour business hours, what that means is we're not open on Sundays. So if you do send us a message on Sunday, we will get back to you on Monday. But now with us being available most of the time, somebody will always get back to you, even if it's to say, I don't have any information yet, but just know that I did receive your email and I am working on it. Well, that's all I have to say. I'm just really excited to have all of you guys on board right now. And I will actually be helping out with the employer panel this afternoon. So I definitely suggest sticking around for that one. We have some fantastic employers who have already worked with hiring international students, so they do understand some of the ins and outs, and they will give you some tips that will be specific to our international population that will help you to be successful once you get here. And that's all I have to say about that.
You say it, but we're part of that team.
Sure. Oh, she's going to make me say the hard thing.
Yes, exactly.
We are part of the employment and student entrepreneurial services at Fanshawe. So that includes career, co-op, community employment, and also the entrepreneurial section of the college, which is I'm going to say Leap Junction or Innovation Village, depending on how you look. So what basically our roles in the community, we do the same things, just serving slightly different populations, but our role is to support you as Fanshawe students and as Fanshawe alumni in trying to prepare yourselves for seeking employment and to find opportunities and to learn how to find those opportunities and any of the other employment related questions that you have. And so we are Career Services. We help you do that by providing workshops, webinars. We do one-to-one, so we can have phone visits with you or virtual visits right now. We have virtual drop-ins, so duty days. So what that means is if you have a question, let's say you have an interview tomorrow and you've never had an interview and you need to talk to somebody right away to know what you can do to help prepare yourself, then you can just contact us and there will be an on-duty career consultant or co-op consultant who can assist you to answer your question right away. We do special events. So a lot of those special events are things like career fairs, and right now they'll be virtual career fairs, but opportunities for you to connect with an employer. We have job boards, and so you will have access both as a current student and as an alumnus to access the job board. We have employers literally from all over the world. The vast majority of those positions will probably be more local than that, but we have employers who will post positions and you have access to look at them and to follow the instructions that are given so that you can connect with those employers and apply for those positions. And then we also have Fanshawe Online, which you're no doubt becoming familiar with already, which is the platform where a lot of those things will be advertised and promoted. And quite often you'll register through us for those. So those are the things that Career Services and co-op can do for you. Today, what we would like to do is to talk to you about resumes and how to build a good Canadian resume. So this is kind of a cut to the chase sort of a presentation. There's lots of information, and you will find, if you haven't already, that everybody you talk to is maybe going to have a little bit of a different take on what a resume should look like or could look like. And that's okay, because there isn't one hard and fast rule, but there are some general things that you will need to know that might be different from a resume that you may have done elsewhere or from how somebody else taught you. So we're just going to look at a sort of a basic format that you can get started. So if you're going to look for part-time work immediately, that you at least have a starting place. And then as you grow, as you get more skill, more experience, and more education, you'll want to build that resume. So you may see us a number of times over the course of several years. So,
Jen, before we get started, just to
Go
make
ahead.
sure everyone is awake the way that we are, can you guys throw in the chat if you are in a co-op program and what program you're in? It's always nice to see who's out there. I look after the IT programs, so, or 3 of them anyways. So some of you may see me in a few weeks, and then Jen has a whole, I can't keep track of Jennifer, so I'm going to make her do that again,
Sure.
another tongue twister. But lots and lots of programs that just the 2 of us represent. And we can also direct you to, if you've got a co-op that, a co-op program that you're in and you're wondering who your co-op consultant is for that, we can let you know who that is as well.
Thanks, Sarah. That's a great idea. So I support the hospitality programs, food and beverage management, hotel and resort, golf and recreation, and travel and tourism. And then I also support all of the aviation programs. One thing you just made me think of, Sarah, is so we have the 2 sections. We've got career services available to all Fanshawe students and alumni. And then as a co-op student, you'll also have a course called Co-op 1020, where we will cover this information as well and in more depth. So like I said, today is kind of high level. Let's get you going. And then depending on what program you're in, you're either going to work with your co-op consultant to make a more in-depth resume or to develop your resume, or you can come back and work with career services as well.
Great, thanks, Jen.
You're
I've
welcome.
got software and information systems testing, networking and architecture, and cybersecurity. Those are my programs, but I work very closely with 2 other co-op consultants that look after the computer program analysis and the computer systems and technology. And Caitlin, can I just get a thumbs up? Are you monitoring the chat if we have a question that we need to address right away? Just
Yes,
let
I
us
am.
know.
Perfect.
Awesome. All right.
All right. So if you want to go to the next slide, Sarah, please. We talked about what?
We pretty much talked about that, yeah.
And I'm sure this has already been said. I didn't quite catch the beginning of the first seminar, but I presume that everybody is aware that copies of the slide deck from today's presentation and any handouts will be available to you. So I guess the first thing that we want to talk about is what a resume is used for. And I wish I could do a poll because I'd be interested to know how many people already think that they have a resume that's going to work for them. But essentially, it's a marketing document. How you advertise yourself, showing how qualified you are for that job, provides an overview of your skills and qualifications. You use it when you formally apply for a job, and it hopefully demonstrates your ability. So those are the things that it's used for. And I wish we were in person so I could see a show of hands, which I can't. But feel free to answer in the chat if you have a suggestion. Because my question is, those are what you use your resume for, but what's its bottom line purpose? I'll give you 2 seconds if anybody thinks they know. What is the actual purpose for your resume? So even though those are things it does, what are we aiming for here in doing your resume?
And anybody that's feeling particularly brave, unmute yourself and tell us what it is. I'd love to hear somebody's voice other than mine.
We'll give it 2 seconds. And that's okay. It's a little daunting when there's... So just to read a couple of these, they're coming up so fast. Thank you, folks, for chipping in. I can't read them.
Hello. I think it's used for an employer to get to know your background and your studies and experience that you have thus far.
You're on the right track. So that's one of the things that it's used for. But why are we doing a resume?
What's the ultimate goal?
Okay, I'll give it to you. Because you're all right. I'm seeing lots of things, and one of the things that I'm seeing is get hired, and indirectly, yes, but the bottom line purpose for your resume is to get the interview, because we don't just send out resumes and all of a sudden an employer calls you and says, here, can you start tomorrow? The resume is so that they have a starting place to gather in information about people who might be suitable for that position, and then from there they will set up interviews, and then you shine in person and hopefully get the job. So it's really important when you're putting together your resume to make sure that you stand out, that you've got a format that's going to be understood by the employer, and that you're doing something that sets you apart from everybody else. So even though we're going to go through kind of a basic format and there will be templates offered and we have templates available to you, you also need to make sure that you're not copying somebody else's resume and that it's not quite as basic as what we're going to go into, because you want it to market you. So where it says marketing document, how are you going to advertise yourself? You don't want to be the same as everybody else. You want to be individual and show that you have unique skills that make you the best person for the job. So that's where we're hopefully going to go with this. And Sarah, we can maybe go to the next.
I think it, now forgive me if I'm pronouncing this incorrectly, but I think it was Dwajin Patel had raised his hand.
Oh, okay, perfect.
Did somebody have a question? If not, okay, we'll just move along then. All right, Jen. So now we're going to talk about some of the things that are must-haves when you are putting together what we typically refer to as a Canadian resume. These are the headings here. So we want, obviously, your name, because that's arguably the most important part, and it may seem silly, but we have seen resumes without their people's names on them. So you want to make sure your name is up there, big and bold and proud. I always suggest going with the name that you prefer to be called. You don't need to have your middle names and those kind of things. Like my full name, I just go by Sarah Rattan on my resume, for instance. You want an email, but not just an email, but you want a professional email. In co-op, if you are in a co-op program and you're applying for a co-op position, we insist that you use your FOL email. So that would just typically be your name. Sometimes there's some numbers in there, and fanshaweonline.ca. If you do not have a professional email now, please go grab one from Gmail or wherever, because we've seen some pretty horrific emails that go out to employers, like girlwholikes2party@hotmail.com. Not a great email to use when you're applying for jobs. Phone number. We want to see a phone number. And again, as silly as it may sound, it's important that it's legible. Like, we want the three numbers, and 4 numbers. You want to make, the goal is basically to make it as easy as possible for an employer to read, for an employer to get in touch with you. Okay. Address is optional. I'm not a big proponent of including an address. Some of you are still in country, so it certainly isn't necessary. And more now than ever, we are working remotely, we're working virtually, okay? So an address isn't necessary. Unless you think it's going to help you get a job, I don't think it's important. Jen, I'm not sure if you've got anything to throw into that.
I think there's 2 different ways you can look at it. And sorry, I was just reading the chats, and before I answer the question, I just want to let everybody know, as best we can, we'll address your questions. If we don't, we're able to see the questions, and we will post the answers to some of those questions later if we miss answering your question right now. With respect to the address, I agree, it's definitely optional, and I think there are occasions when it's of value. So for example, if you live in a small town and you want the employer to know that you're from there, you might want to use your address, or that, you know, you want to demonstrate that you're local, and so it would be better to hire you than somebody that lives a distance. But it might work in the reverse as well. So you kind of have to weigh out what is going to work best for you.
All right, so that's the address. And again, if you've got a question, as Rebecca said, you've got access to career consultants, as you know, just in an email really quickly. So don't be afraid to ask them or ask your co-op consultant. A link to either your website, especially if you've got something that you want to highlight that's related to your career. And we really suggest a LinkedIn profile, a professional LinkedIn profile. Career Services offers many workshops on building that LinkedIn profile. And I imagine you guys met Maya yesterday. If you haven't, you will. And she is a LinkedIn liaison. So she's your expert on LinkedIn if you've got questions. And then finally, of course, we have to go the don'ts. Don't include any personal details from your age, especially your SIN, your race, your religion, anything like that is not acceptable. And I'm going to say this twice. Do not include your photo on your resume. What was that? Do not include your photo on your resume, okay? I know in some parts of the world it is acceptable and it's expected even. In Canada, it's not. And we're gonna go through some of the things like what your rights are at the end of this presentation, but employers cannot be seen to be hiring on using any biases, and a picture can be very much a bias. So please don't include that. All right, so Jen, are you doing this one? I can't remember.
I can, sure.
This is your favorite.
Sure. So we're not going to spend a lot of time on this, but what we are going to do on this slide, I mean, with regard to reverse chronological, other than to tell you it is one type of resume. So there's a number of different kinds of resumes. We're going to use this because it is the most common and it's probably the most easy to put together initially. To get something that's going to work for you. And simply, it just means you're going to present the information in reverse chronological order. So most recent first, always. When you're talking about your education, it's going to be most recent first. When you're talking about your experience, it's most recent first. Because that's what employers are going to go to. So one of the things that we didn't talk about initially is how long an employer might take your resume. And there's varying thoughts on this from 12 to 20 seconds to 2 minutes. The bottom line is it's a very short space of time that an employer is, if they're getting 400 or 500 resumes, which they might depending on the position, they need a way to get down to business very quickly. And so they're going to skim it and they want to see the most important information. So it's always the most recent first and the most important first, so that you grab their attention, and if you grab their attention, then they're going to carry on reading. So Sarah, if we could go to the next slide. So this is a reverse chronological format that we're going to talk about today.
So this is the format that we really urge you to use, and this is the format that most employers prefer in North America. Okay, so you can see up top we've got your name starting first. So again, your first name and your last name, your phone number that they can get a hold of you at. So if you are here in Canada and you've got a Canadian phone number, put that down. And of course your email. And again, use your FOL email if you are applying for co-op positions, and we will talk about that in those co-op 1020 classes. The next arguably most important part, other than your name, is going to be the highlight of your qualifications. Now, some students put a career objective. They call it any number of different names. Career objective. I can't think of anything else right now off the top of my head. Intro, different things that they call it, Jen, right?
Yeah, sorry, just to interrupt, people are saying the slides are frozen, the screen's frozen, so we're still on reverse chronological.
Oh. I'm not sure why that is, but it's really, it's inconsequential. I can just explain to you what we've got here. It's just a picture of a resume, and like I said, it's your name first and your contact information, and then we go into your skills, what you bring to the table basically, and it should be tailored to the position that you're applying to. So if you're applying to, say, McDonald's, and you've got experience working in a fast food chain, or you've worked for mom and dad in their restaurant, those kind of things that you think are going to be important to the employer, that's what you're going to lead with. So reverse is if you're applying to McDonald's for a part-time job and you've got an IT background, you're not going to lead with that, because although that's wonderful, that's great, it's not those skills that the employer is going to be focused on and they're going to be looking for. Yeah. Is it still frozen, guys?
It is still frozen, and somebody suggested if you stop the screen and reshare.
Okay.
While doing that, I'd like to just step into and talk about that skill section, because to me, so my background, among other things, I've worked with students to help them find employment, but I've also worked in HR. And so coming from a human resources perspective, I want to know why you want my job, and that you understand the job that you're applying for, and that you've taken the time to make a resume that suits the job that you're applying for. So that's why that skills and strengths section is so important. So then the question is, well, how do I know what the employer wants? The answer is, and if we were in class, I'd be asking people, but in the interest of time, I'm just going to tell you. And the answer is, you need to know what the job is. So you need to do some research. So either if you have a job ad, then obviously it's going to tell you what the employer is looking for. If not, you can go online, and there are any number of samples of maybe similar jobs. So you'll get a sense at least of what the employer is looking for. You may just have to use your own imagination and what you know of that kind of work, and think about the skills that they might be looking for. And so once you've got those skills and you understand them, what I often ask my students to do, and it's not rocket science, but it works really well for me anyways, it may not work for you, but it's one idea, is make a T-chart. So simply you're going to draw a line this way down the screen and a line this way. So you've got to, can't quite see if that's straight, you got a T anyways. And on one side of that, you're going to have they want. That's your heading. What does the employer want? So you go through your ad and you write down the things that they have indicated they want. And on the other side, you're going to write I have. And you have to think about, what skills do I have? Even if I haven't done that kind of work before, how am I going to demonstrate to the employer that I have the ability to do that job, even if I don't have the experience yet? So what have I done that would be similar or demonstrate that I can do it? So you write down a list of what you have. And once you know what they want and what you have, your highlight section is going to write itself, because now you've thought through what's important to them, and you might put it in priority. If they've mentioned teamwork 5 times in their ad, even if they haven't said, I want a team player, team is really important to them. So put team up first. So that's what we talked about with reverse chronology, most recent first, but also most important. So Sarah, back to you.
All right. So So we're going to go through all this section. So we talked about your highlights. Jen did a really good overview of that. And then we're going to go into education. That's going to be the next most important part. And you want to lead, even though you're just starting with Fanshawe College, that is the most recent, as Jennifer mentioned, you want to lead with that. Oftentimes we get a resume, it doesn't even list Fanshawe College. You want to put that as soon as you start, or as soon as you're accepted. And we'll go into more detail about that. Then you're going to go into experience, okay? Because right now it's the education that's going to get you in the door. It's that recent education with Fanshawe College. It's not your experience typically. So please start with your education, followed by your experience. And then finally, any activities or interest, hobbies, those kind of things. And again, we'll go into that in a little bit more detail. So we're going to talk a little bit about transferable skills. Is anybody familiar with that term? Anybody here heard of that term? Let's see what our chats say. Yeah, okay, great. Anybody want to give a shot about what they think a transferable skill is? A definition?
Sarah, if nobody does, in a second, I just am answering somebody's question, which may answer some of that as well.
And I keep getting, can you share this PowerPoint presentation? Apparently, Caitlin has shared this already. Okay, so you want to explain what it is then, Jen? Sorry.
Well, I'm just looking. So a lot of people have already understood. So a transferable skill is simply that. It's one which you have developed elsewhere that you take with you wherever you go. So it's not necessarily a skill specific to a job. So an example would be communication skills or teamwork. Those are things that you learn in many, many different forums. You might have learned them in a job, but you might have learned them playing basketball or cricket or in some other way. And so a lot of people are, I'm seeing very
great answers in here. Holy cow.
They are great. And so the question that caught my eye, and it was a little ways back, was if we've taken other courses at Fanshawe, should we include them? And the answer is absolutely, because again,
always,
they're all skills that you're building and a demonstration that you're capable of learning and applying skills. And it's the proof to, if you say I have good time management skills, that may be the proof that you need to say I have good time management skills because I have taken prior post-secondary education and I learned to manage my time. So those are really good examples of transferable skills.
Along those lines, as Jennifer said, always include your education, all of your education. Always include your experience as well, even if it's from other countries. You may find people will tell you, oh no, don't count. It doesn't count if it's not from Canada. That is absolutely not true. And if you run into that, please send them to come and see me and I'll talk to them about that because it's very, very important, okay? So Jen did a really good rundown about what a transferable skill is. Just being here and taking part in a Zoom meeting, you are expanding your skills. I see some people sharing some tips and tricks for us on presenting Zoom, like stop sharing your screen. Great tip, thank you.
We appreciate it, yeah.
So education, we kind of touched on that a little bit, and it's absolutely required. You have to have that in there. We suggest you don't include high school. So it's just your post-secondary and onwards. It's not necessary. You wouldn't be here without it. So it's really not necessary. And again, your most recent first. So if somebody out there is in software and information systems testing, this is where we would put software and information systems testing. Or here we've got one of Jen's programs, food and beverage management, Fanshawe College. That's all that's needed. And notice Fanshawe. Make sure you spell Fanshawe right. A lot of people don't spell it right, even people I work with. So trust me, you're not alone. And then you want to start with, so if you're just starting this September, it would be September 2020 to the present or ongoing. You can put your end date there. It's always nice for an employer, especially if you're getting closer to that end date, you might want to pop that in there. And this is where you would just want to take a couple of bullet points and explain maybe your program. some of the learning outcomes or some of the courses that you're studying, those kind of things in the program, so that the employer has a little bit of a snapshot of what the program is, okay? Because something like food and beverage management, that's a pretty good description of what that program is. But software and information systems testing, somebody that's not in IT may not have any idea what that means, okay? Anything to add on that, Jen?
Yeah, just a quick thought, because often, well, sorry, just also see a quick question. It says, can we include it even though we're still taking the program? Absolutely, because you're learning as you go along. And, you know, there's a bit of a difference between a co-op resume and a general one if you're looking for part-time work. And co-op, they know you're a student, so they know you're still learning. So you certainly can include it. So one of the things that I find sometimes is that students are not sure how to represent the skills they have, or they don't feel they have a lot of skills because perhaps you are coming straight from high school and maybe you've never worked, so you have no idea what to put on it. So look at things in education. One of the nice things is that you are in courses, so you are going to be learning, and keep in mind, you know, you're going to continue to build your skills as you go. So one of the places that you can find out what are some of the skills that I can tell an employer I either have or I'm going to have is go to your course information sheet. So at the beginning of every course, you're going to get a course information sheet that tells you what you're going to learn in that course. So you don't want to lie and say these are skills I already have, but you could indicate, maybe give a couple of examples of the courses that you're going to take, or a couple of examples of the skills that you're going to build to demonstrate what you will know, if it's relevant to the job that you're applying for.
All right, we'll move along to experience. I'm assuming you guys can still see my screen. Nothing's frozen again. Awesome, good thumbs up from Caitlin, love it. So here we've got experience. So again, we went from your name and your contact information right into your skills, what you bring to the table. Then we've got your education, and we've hopefully spelled that out. And again, we are here as a resource, either myself, Jennifer, or somebody from your career team. We can help when you need help with this. I also really urge you to take part in those workshops. Maya offers workshops all the time that are virtual, just like this, that she will explain exactly what goes into a Canadian resume. So here we've got crew member. Thumbs up, anybody worked at McDonald's before? I have never worked at McDonald's. Like, I've worked everywhere, but I've never worked at McDonald's. So, and that is one place that we see, doesn't matter what part of the world you're from, people have worked at McDonald's. So, so here we've got crew member. Let's say this is when you started. So again, we've got that date, the month and the year, the month and the year. That's not all, that's all we need. We don't need October 1st, et cetera, et cetera. It's just the month and the year. Employers want to know that because they want to get, rather than just the year, because it could be 2018 to 2019. It could be December to January. That's 2 months. Or it could be January to December, which is 2 years. So that's a big difference. Okay. So always include your month and your year. At McDonald's, what did you do? Okay. So if you trained people, that's a really big bonus on your resume, that you are able to work with others and train others. That's something that employers would be interested in knowing. And again, that's a transferable skill. If you can train somebody at McDonald's, you can probably train them doing other things as well. You know what's expected of you. If you handled cash, if you worked a cash register, if you worked on the line preparing, so you know about processes, all those great things, okay, are things that you want to include. Anything that's paid, volunteerism is also important. It's a very, very coveted here in North America, any volunteer positions. Co-curricular record, not sure if anybody's talked to you guys about that. I'll just give you a quick synopsis. Caitlin's shaking her head no. So a co-curricular record is, consider it your transcript for everything non-academic. So if you're on the cricket team, if you're part of the student council, those kind of things, that's where you would put it. And I'm sure it'll be explained in further detail. Some of your programs include a placement. Anybody that's in the early childhood education programs, social service worker, I think TV broadcasting, any of those programs typically have a placement. Co-op. So co-ops are typically paid, different parameters right now due to COVID. And we will talk to you about that if you're in a co-op program. And of course, any projects, any open source projects, especially those IT students that work on projects online, you're going to want to include. I'm seeing lots of chats. Jen, do we have questions?
We do have a few, and a couple that I would like to address, and I probably missed some, but one of the questions that I did notice was how far back to include experience. So somebody said, should I include it from 10 years ago?
Oh, great question.
It is a great question and a tough one. My personal view, and Sarah may have some thoughts on it as well, is that you don't necessarily usually want to go too far back. So, you know, I think the maybe general rule of thumb is about 10 years would be the maximum. However, it depends on what that experience is. And I'll give you an example. So my background is hotel. I worked in a hotel many years ago. And when I applied to the college for the position, I knew that I was going to be, one of the portfolios would be the hospitality program, including hotel. And even though I had worked in hotel, it was old experience, and most of my experience from that time forward had been more in the educational field and in line with the work that I'm doing. But I wanted the school to know that I did have an understanding and experience in hotel because it was important to that job. So normally I would never include the hotel experience in my resume because my line of work is so different now and it's so far behind. But in that case, I did briefly include it, or we're not going to have time for cover letters today, but that's another place that you might include that. So past experience, you have to kind of weigh out, is it really valid? Is it really important or not? The other question was around, or a comment was around volunteer work. And a lot of times in my experience, students will say, you know, volunteered, say and just list the places they volunteered. So Red Cross for, and, you know, a bunch of other places. But that's a little bit meaningless for the employer because there's so many different things that you can do. So especially if you don't have a lot of work experience, to expand on your volunteer experience and make it look, put it in the same format as your job experience is more valuable, because then you can demonstrate, you know, were you giving people drinks of juice after they had blood taken, or were you in charge of money and doing, you know, collecting pledges or balancing all of the pledges that were received, or were you organizing? There's many different things that will demonstrate some of those different transferable skills. So be sure and elaborate enough that people understand that the value of that volunteer experience or co-curricular experience or co-op experience relevant to the job that you're applying for.
I had there's a couple of questions about length of resumes, those kind of things. Just want to clear up, get it out there that placements are typically not paid. They are part of your curriculum, so it's part of your learning, so they are not paid. Sometimes you might get an honorarium as a thank you, but typically not, because a lot of those placements are with not-for-profits, depending on what school you're with. Most co-ops are paid, but again, things have changed because of COVID, and we will address that in your Co-op 1020 class. There was another question. Oh, there's a lot of question and a lot of chatter about 1 or 2 page resumes. So 2 pages, typically at this point in your career, Jennifer and I, Caitlin, Rebecca, we would have typically a 2-page resume, okay? But some students just don't have enough experience to do that, and that's fine, especially if you're applying for volunteer positions, which you do have to apply for sometimes, or positions in fast food, those kind of things. Rebecca's your best source to talk to about that further, okay? Lots of questions in there. I have a master's and a PhD degree in my country, and I'm doing postgrad cert in Fanshawe. Yeah, you're going to want to quote definitely your levels of education. And what I would suggest is that you meet with your co-op consultant or your career consultant. Any of those specific to you questions, I'm really going to urge you to meet with somebody, and we are available. That's our job. Okay. All right, I'm going to move on because Caitlin's going to get really angry if we go over, I'm sure. No, she's saying no. Okay, so we got all the time in the world. That's awesome. All right, so we've gone over our sections. We've got our contact information, we've got our skills, we've got our education, we've got our experience, and now we're going into that other section. This is optional, completely optional, but it's not a bad idea because it gives the employer it rounds out who you are and rounds out your experience. And it might also include things that you didn't have room for in other areas. So things like certificates. If you've been certified in, I don't know, first aid, and you think that's important. If it's important to the job, put it in your skills. But if it's just an added bonus, then maybe put it at the end. Professional development. So any conferences that you've attended or presented at can be really important to an employer. Awards, memberships, anything, again, that's going to help you stand out that you think will be relevant and important to an employer. Okay. And again, if you've got questions about that, come and see one of us and we can work through that and talk through that with you. And I see Jen going to raise her hand there.
Yeah, I was just going to add to that because there was a question from somebody who had done some photography which wasn't relevant to the kind of work. So this might be where you would add that kind of information. And sometimes because the employer is looking to see if you're a good fit with their organization, that might be something that is of interest to them and might stand out and might make them want to interview you. You have to kind of weigh out, again, is, you know, it says don't list irrelevant interests or hobbies. You have to there's a bit of a fine line. So if you've done something really cool, let's say you were on the Olympic sailing team, not very many of us can say that. So that might be something that might be an added little bonus if it seems to fit in with the line of work that you're applying for, or that might be of interest. But the fact that you like to watch TV, everybody likes to watch TV, or most people do. So it may not be necessarily one of the best things to list.
Just adding something to the chat here about finding out about volunteerism, etc. Caitlin's got some great stuff there too. So, and just so you know, we do have virtual career fairs, things like that, that you will want to make sure that you follow us on social media so that you are privy to all that information. So we've added here in the presentation some great action verbs that you're going to want to include in maybe your skills section. Okay. One of the things that we might not have mentioned, if Jen mentioned it, I wasn't paying attention, I guess. But one of the things that you don't want to do in your skills section is say, I did this. Okay. It's always, it's never first person. Okay. So it's always start with those great action verbs like ability to, experienced with, coach this, or whatever it is. And here is a great guide for you to use to help you write those skills sections. And again, we can help you with that, but here's some great words for you. And again, this has been provided to you as far as I understand. So this is always fun to go over what some of the reasons that resumes are rejected. And I think Jen and I and Rebecca could probably do a 3-hour resume presentation on why things are rejected, some of the things that we've seen. And not to make light of what people do, it's just that things are different all over the world, okay? And expectations are different. And but some of the key things, and these are the top 5 things that you'll find that your resumes are going to be rejected because of. And the first one is spelling mistakes. And sometimes that's your fault, and sometimes it's that darn autocorrect. I saw a resume once that said 128 grand revenue instead of avenue. Okay, so, and the person had been handing this out for a while, didn't notice it, because sometimes we get so married to our documents that we're not the best proofreader or the copy editor. So have someone else look at it. Length. So most often you are not going to need anything more than a 2-page resume. Anybody throw in the chat if you know who the president of Fanshawe College is. You get bonus marks for that. But I can guarantee when he applied to be president of Fanshawe College, he handed in a CV or a curriculum vitae, which would probably be about 5, 6, 7, 8 pages long. Other than that, you're not going to need that CV, the long version of your work history. So keep it to maximum 2 pages. Formatting. Make sure that it's formatted correctly. So you've got the same font throughout. You've got the same font size throughout. Things like that. Again, what's not on there? Your photo's not on there, right? Things like that, okay? You want to make sure your name is on both pages, because if those pages ever, someday when we get back to maybe printing things and things are hard copies, you don't want those sections to be separated. Confidential info, so anything that somebody can find out even more about you, like your banking information, things like that. So do not include your social insurance number. Never, ever supply that to anybody. Just a very funny story. I was filling out some education forms for the bank for my son, and I asked him for a SIN number and he wouldn't give it to me. So we've hammered that home. So it's very important not to give that out, okay? And then of course, false info. And I know none of you upstanding citizens would ever put anything that's false or misleading on your resume, but there have been cases that people have put things that are not true on your resume. And it's really easy to find out, A, online, or B, if you get into a job that you said you could do this, it doesn't take the employer very long to figure out that you don't know how to do that. Okay, just be very forthcoming. If they have a bunch of skills that they want you to have, that's typically their wish list. If you're not familiar with it, a lot of the time they're happy to teach you or guide you. Okay, and we could go into that for quite some time, but just remember that. Just don't put anything that's false on there. Did I miss anything, Jen?
I don't think so. Other than I'm going to go back just really quickly to a question that was asked very near the beginning. And I think it was around when we said, make yourself stand out. And somebody, this is relative to formatting, somebody asked if it was okay to make it in color. And typically the answer is no. Don't get too fancy with your fonts or too fancy with your papers and your colors, because that will not make up for not presenting your information properly, or if you don't have the skill, it's still not going to get you the attention. The exception to that might be if you're in a really creative field. There may be something that you might do more creatively or visually or graphically, but that's, I think, if you are at that sort of level and you think you need to do something like that, then again, I would urge you to talk to either your co-op consultant or your career services consultant, and they can help you decide what would be appropriate.
Sarah is asking if you give your SIN number to a recruitment agency. Oh, Jen's saying no. I was deferring that to Caitlin,
yeah.
But
only when you're hired. Now, your SIN number is not any employer is entitled to have it if they have actually hired you. And they may ask you for a picture. If they have hired you, that's probably for your, maybe a security badge or something like that, but not ahead of time. And one of the reasons for pictures that you wouldn't put a picture in is because you don't want somebody to look at you and make a decision whether or not they want to hire you based on how you look. Because even if they don't like how you look, that's not fair. And if they do like how you look, it might be uncomfortable. So it's just no pictures, no confidential information.
So your visual presentation, we've talked about this at length, that it's a maximum 2 pages. Most important content on the first page. So it's much like a newspaper. I don't know if any of you are familiar with newspapers. They're from the old days, but you would always have the most important stuff on the front. Bullet points. Bullet points, there's been a number of studies about bullet points, and it's much easier for the eye to read. So if you're doing, rather than full sentences, we never suggest full sentences in a resume, but it would just be a bullet point. Ability to, as I mentioned, experience with. So consistent format and nice white space. So you don't want it all crammed into, 8-point font with, an essay on one page. You want to make sure that it's pleasing to the eye. Triple check for technical errors. So that's where you'd have somebody review it for you, and avoid any wrong terminology or repetition. Okay, so be very careful about that. So at the bottom, it says this employer's first impression is of you. So make sure you make it a positive one. So if you put in your skills section, for instance, excellent attention to detail, and you've spelled Fanshawe wrong, or you've done something that's not proving that you've got attention to detail, you just kind of shot yourself in the foot right there. Okay, so your resume should be a reflection of your abilities. Okay, if that makes sense. Jen, I haven't had to deal with many job scams. I know a number of us have in the office, And I know on LinkedIn, you can still get scammed on LinkedIn. And there's scammers are incredibly creative. But have you had many experiences with job scams with students?
I have not, because again, with co-op, typically we have that connection, a more direct connection with an employer. But I see
I've had lots of experience. If you
Rebecca
have any
has those.
questions.
I was just going to call on you, Rebecca, because
I'm here. Yeah, I always say go with your gut. If
Have you had
feel-
any yet, Rebecca, that we should be
I
aware of?
haven't had any during this pandemic time at
Okay,
all.
because I've seen some on LinkedIn, just heard about them.
Yeah, I've seen some on Indeed. Indeed tends to be, because it's really easy for anyone to upload a job posting to Indeed. So even though there's lots of good things on there, you have to be careful. I always just say go with your gut. If they're being too pushy, if their email addresses look strange, if some of the wording in the email isn't feeling like it's coming from a specific employer, if they're asking you immediately for personal information such as banking, SIN numbers, passport information, anything like that. We always say if you get if you get an offer from somebody that you haven't even interviewed with, that's probably the biggest red flag. We always offer that if you get an offer and you're not sure if it's a scam or not, feel free to email your career consultant. We will look at it immediately, because we don't want you losing a good opportunity, but we also don't want you getting scammed. So always feel free to reach out to us and we're happy to look at it immediately.
And I would say go with your gut for sure, but never accept money if you've not worked, if you haven't done anything, and never pay for anything to get a job.
No, if they've sent you money and said buy yourself office supplies and then send us back the rest, don't do it, because all you're going to be out is that entire money, and the scammer is going to have that money from you.
So you want to make sure, again, that you know your rights. We kind of alluded to this earlier. So top 7 illegal questions to ask in an interview. So this goes back to that, what to include and what not to include. So we've said don't include race, age, marital status, anything like that. However, if you do, you're open to be asked about it in an interview. So, and it is illegal for a lot of these things, for an employer to ask you what your age is, because you could be discriminated against because of your age, because of your sex, because of your religion, and we certainly don't want that. So they cannot ask you about race, place of origin or ethnic origin, religion, age, disability, sexual orientation, marital and family status, or financial situations. These are all no-nos. If you encounter this, let Rebecca know immediately, okay? Because we want to know that about that employer. General minimum wage, 18 years and older, is $14 an hour. And on-the-job training or orientation hours require that you are paid by the employer. So if they say we're going to train you, and at the end of the training, we might offer you some hours, or we're going to offer you hours, but we can't pay you for the training, that's illegal. Doesn't matter if it's mom and dad, aunts, uncles, whatever. Do not accept any training that's not compensated, okay? I don't know if you ladies have anything to add to that, but that's it's very serious. It can affect, and Caitlin could attest to this, it can affect your work visa as well, okay? And you don't want to put anything in jeopardy when it comes to that work visa, study visa, anything like that. Rebecca, do you want to talk about this? Because you probably can wrap this up. We're not
Sure.
as...
So we are still continuing to do drop-in sessions for students, even though we can't physically see you in person. So during the regular kind of school times when we were face-to-face, there's always someone available in the office. We also have defined times. You can drop in and ask sort of quicker questions. So if you just want us to take a quick look at your resume, we can do that. If you need someone to help you build your resume, then you'll want to make a one-on-one appointment. But we do have those services offered. If you go onto the career services page, there are ways to be able to see exactly when the drop-in is. We are doing it weekly. We're offering it at different times right now. We just want to make sure that every student, no matter where you're living right now, has access to this service. So if you want more information that way, I did provide my email address, and Caitlin just put up the link to our career services website. But we are there to either help you look for jobs on our FOL job board. And just to preface that those jobs are not Fanshawe jobs. Those are jobs that employers outside of Fanshawe have sent us to offer to our Fanshawe students. So they are employers who are already interested in hiring Fanshawe students because the level of training and education that you receive really is top notch. We also help you again with your resume and cover letter writing. We kind of say they're quick and dirty opportunities to come in and talk to us. We only take about 10 minutes with each person, but if we find that your questions are a little bit more in depth, we're not just going to send you away and say good luck. We will book an appointment with you, or at least provide you with the career services consultant to make sure that you get exactly what you need.
The ECE program consultant, so you'll have to look that up on Fanshawe Online, or Fanshawe on the Fanshawe website, but and her name escapes me right now, but it is a placement program. I'm not sure what's going on in placements. So Jen and I, our specialty is co-op. So, and somebody was asking if co-ops are paid. Typically, yes. Okay, so we really advocate for that, but of course we've had to make some alternative arrangements because of COVID. Things obviously did change, and we will discuss that in your co-op 1020 class. Okay, all those options available to you.
And I just want to reiterate, because the questions are going by fast and furious, and we've been able to address some of them, but bottom line, we'll go through the chat later, and we should be able to put up some responses or find some responses to those questions for people. And those that aren't answered, as both Rebecca and Sarah have pointed out, you may be able to get answered by setting up an appointment with your career consultant or doing a virtual drop-in, or your co-op consultant will address it in class with you.
So there's some workshops that are available to you, virtual drop-in. Great, these guys have really, they know their stuff, and they've figured out how to present a great workshop. So I really suggest that you attend if you want more information. These are some of the things that they offer webinars in: resume writing, cover letters. Somebody I think mentioned cover letters and references. Cover letters, resumes are the pinnacle. Cover letters would probably be a close second. Okay, they're very important, and most employers, 99% of employers, are going to ask for them. And as I mentioned earlier, even volunteer positions, you've got to put in a resume for. Okay. Virtual networking, 10 steps to your next job, LinkedIn, virtual phone interview prep. So obviously now more than ever, mock interviews virtually are really important, and it's a great skill to have, and it's a great workshop to take part in so that you are prepared when you do have to do that online interview. How to be job ready, or again, just make an appointment with your co-op consultant or drop into the duty days. That wraps it up. What are you laughing about, Jen?
Oh, any questions? There's thousands of questions.
Oh my goodness.
We will get you answers.
So what I was going to do now, I'm going to stop sharing, and then I was going to grab the link for the co-op programs, the consultants for the programs, and put it in the chat. So if somebody's got a co-op program and they're wondering who their consultant is, I could do that. So just give me 2 seconds.
While you're doing that, Sarah, I've seen this question a number of times, or variation, which is, do we get jobs of our related study field without experience? And that's always a difficult question to answer, but the short answer is yes. Employers who are looking to hire, when they post on the co-op or the career services site, so career services, if it's post-grad, they understand they're posting positions to people who are either in a program or finishing their program, and they're not expecting you to know everything. And even if you were a graduate, you won't know everything. I don't know everything. Sarah doesn't know everything. Rebecca doesn't. It's a learning process. So what you're trying to do in your resume is really just to say, I understand the job that you are posting for, and I understand the skills that you're looking for, and here are the skills that I have. And those skills are, you may have experience that they're looking for, but you're also trying to demonstrate, even though I don't have experience yet, I understand what you need and I have the capabilities, and here's the experience that I have, and that's why I think I have the capabilities. I mean, you wouldn't say it in so many words, but that's essentially what you're trying to demonstrate, both through your resume, your cover letter, and in your interview. And so the bottom line answer is yes, of course, employers will hire you even if you don't yet have experience in your field.
The drop in to participate, I think the link was there on the slide. Rebecca, I don't know if there's a link that you can share for the drop in.
Yeah, I'm just getting that. And it's actually,
right.
it's through pretty much all, you can access all of this stuff through your Fanshawe online. The drop down menu at the top, it'll say career/co-op/CCR. If you use that link, you can get into the job board and different workshops that way. I'm going to try to find the direct link for you.
Ankita, you were asking about educational camps and seminars. So if it's related directly to your program, I would probably put it in that other section if it doesn't fit under education or under even the skills. But again, I would probably meet with your co-op or your career consultant and suss that out a little bit more in detail with them.
And then also, depending on where you did those events or seminars, if they're through Fanshawe, they may well be something that would be included in your co-curricular record as well.
So do you get paid in co-op? Again, it depends. How's that for an answer? And that is a great answer as you embark on your educational journey. Everything, it depends, okay? But right now with COVID, Fanshawe has done an absolutely incredible job of pivoting. Like I think within the week of us going remote, we came up with a new set of options for you to still get your co-op credit. So typically you have to do at least 14 weeks, 420 hours. Is that correct, Jen?
Yep.
Yeah. So right now, if you are in a co-op program, we're expecting you get at least 320 hours over at least minimum of 8 weeks, because we understand things are a little bit different. Employers are still trying to figure things out themselves, and we have incredible employers that are very supportive of our programs. But again, they're still trying to figure out this working from home thing. So we gave students a little bit more extra time to land that co-op. Just to be clear as well, I always like to point this out. We do not hand you a co-op. Here's your co-op. You have to work at it, and that's why you have to attend those classes, and we walk you through the process of securing a co-op job. Some of the alternatives this semester, and we also had them for the summer semester, are things like doing projects with employers, using volunteerism, so that's not paid. Ultimately, you know, the best scenario, the best case scenario is that you get a paid co-op, and we still are having students find those, but it's not always the case in these times. So we also have a research paper option. And again, we're going to go into complete detail with you in your Co-op 1020 class. And if you're starting, for instance, if you're starting computer program analysis next week, your co-op is not until your 4th semester. So things may be completely different by then. So me telling you what the co-op options are now may be completely irrelevant then. So that's why just wait until your Co-op 1020 class, and we'll go over all of those details. Is that fair, Jen? Do you have anything to add to that?
No, I think that's absolutely fair, because I'm just seeing some questions from students in some of my specific programs. And it really, there isn't time to answer the questions because there aren't easy answers right now with respect to job market and labor market. And I think Sarah summed it up. It's a situation right now. A lot's going to change or can change in the next little while between now and the time that you might be doing your work term. And we'll answer your questions as best we can in class, specific to your programs and specific to the industries that we support at that time.
And anything placement related, we do not do any placements out of our office. So you're best to go to your either your professor or most specifically your coordinator about that, because I'm not even sure what's going on with placements right now. And in fact, I know that a lot of curriculum got changed around and was moved around. So if, let's say you had a placement this semester, they've switched it to the theory is being presented this semester, for instance. So connect with your school and with your program coordinator.
Tricky question there about is co-op from internship, and the
You take that one, Jen.
yes, the short answer is yes. The long answer is, well, there are a lot of definitions and they're similar, and people use them interchangeably. So again, that's something that if you're in a co-op program, your co-op consultant will go through with you. But for purposes of if your question is because you're in an internship program, yes, they are. There's a slightly different definition. There are set co-op programs that have set requirements, which would be different from how some of the internships are worked. So again, you're either going to need to talk to your program consultant or your professor or your co-op consultant, depending on what program you're in.
And it gets a little confusing. I know that when I started at Fanshawe as an employee, it is very confusing. So Fanshawe College is the big mothership, right? And within that ship, there are different schools. So if you are in ECE, for instance, you are in the School of Community Studies, okay? And I know, believe me, it does get very, very confusing. So don't be afraid to ask, what school am I in? What school do I belong to? So anything that's business related is typically part of the Lawrence Kinlan School of Business, okay? And that's where you're gonna get a lot of things like your academic advisor, your coordinators are there, things like that, okay? But again, don't be afraid to ask.
And I just want to add something to that. If you are emailing us and asking us what school you belong to, if you can just please put down the program that you're in, it makes it so much easier, because I know in career, I don't have access to your student number to discover what program you are in, what school you're under. So if you can let us know what program you're in, it makes it so much easier to help you.
To add to that, Rebecca, it's really helpful to include, if you're sending me an email, please give me your student number, okay? Because you'll be surprised how many Sarah Rattans there are in our database, right? And it's the same with a lot of students. So the student number helps us define exactly what your file is. So fashion marketing and management, there is a co-op, so you're going to want to get in touch with Tracy McIntyre. So I did leave the list there of your co-op consultants. It's further up. I'll have to go back and get it. But there is a general email. It's co-op at Fanshawe, and you can direct it there and they will send it out to the correct consultant. Oh, co-op abroad. There's a Caitlin question. Caitlin loves that question.
I do love that question. So you can do co-op abroad. It's a little different now in times of COVID. So we've had students do co-ops abroad. We've had them go to the US, to Spain, to Germany, Switzerland, all over the place, which is fantastic. It's just a little more complicated now with COVID because there are travel restrictions to consider. But if you're interested in co-op abroad, you're welcome to contact the international office and I can give you all the details for it. I am just noticing that we've hit our time limit, and I think if we keep taking questions, we'll be here all day. But if anyone has questions, please reach out to your co-op and career consultants. They're here to help you. We've shared the link a few times on how to find their contact information, so you can definitely get in touch with them again. This is not the last time you will see them. I'd like to thank Rebecca, Jennifer, and Sarah for joining us this morning. It was a great presentation. I can tell from the questions that the students really appreciated it, and it was fantastic to have you. I know we'll see one or two of you again later on today. For all the students, we are going to take a short break now, so it'll be a 14-minute break. We'll be coming back at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Hello, welcome back everyone. I hope you had a nice quick little break. You were able to grab a snack. So we are going to continue with Fanshawe Works. We're about to have a workshop on Canadian workplace expectations. And I am very happy to welcome Christina Rapson and Christina Lark, who will be leading this presentation. So ladies, I will turn this over to you.
Thank you so much for everyone for joining us today. We're looking forward to talking to you about Canadian workplace expectations. I can see by joining us today, most of you are enthusiastic about working in Canada, so that's great. So today we're talking about workplace expectations. And I'm Christina Rapson. I am the career consultant for the Lawrence Kinlan School of Business and Woodstock Oxford Regional Campus. And my colleague, who's also Christina.
Hi everyone, my name is Christina Lark. So I work in career services as well. And I'm currently the career services consultant for London South Campus, the School of Information Technology, and the School of Transportation Technology and Apprenticeship as well. So I look forward to meeting with many of you who may be in those programs.
And before we start, we're going to ask how many of you, if you want to raise your hand in the chat or on the screen, are going to be looking for a part-time job right now. I see lots in the chat, a lot of needs.
Nice, yeah, I see a lot of people saying what they are going to be looking.
That's great. So you may want to take some notes here as we go through some of the expectations so that you can be successful as you start your new job. So our department is Employment and Student Entrepreneurial Services. Christina and I work with Career Services. We support all students and alumni with their career development needs, whether it's looking for a part-time job while you're studying or a job as you are about to graduate as well, and work with alumni. That includes job postings, assisting you with your resume, cover letter, interview preparation. And if you're in a co-op program, you do have a cooperative education consultant who will support you when it comes to preparing to go out on your co-op and helping you with your search. And our Community Employment Services is our sister office who works with community members who are unemployed and underemployed. And we also have Leap Junction, which is support for entrepreneurs. So if you're thinking of starting your own business or interested in that, they have some great workshops and support there as well.
Hey, so this is a picture of our team, which includes team members from Career and Co-op and Community Employment Services and Leap Junction. And you'll notice in the picture we're holding a sign there, which is that Fanshawe is #1 in Ontario for graduate employment. So that's a statistic that we're very proud of. The actual percentage is 90.3% of Fanshawe graduates finding employment within the first 6 months. So that's something that we work very hard towards, and we hope that you can each be a part of that success.
Great. So something to remember about getting a job, it is a completely different skill set than keeping a job. There's a little relationship between the two. You always want to prepare for the worst and bring your best. 78% of all job losses actually occur within the first week on the job. So the first 30 days of work are a very critical period when you start a new job. So we actually have a fun little activity here called Did This Really Happen? I'm going to let Christina take this away.
So did
We have
this
a poll
really
as well.
So we're going to read through some examples, and we want you to try and guess, do you think this really happened? So this is where we have the polls, if we can have those
perfect.
Up. Okay.
Thanks, Frank.
So you can see in the poll window here, we have 4 different scenarios, and you can vote yes or no for the polls. So we have, the scenarios will be up on the slide too, and you should see the polls pop up. But scenario 1 is sleeping at your desk and caught several times doing this, moved to taking a washroom break and caught sleeping in the car. So do you think this really happened, yes or no? Then we have scenario 2, telling the employer you need a week off to help a family member move, only to have the employer find out that you're working for a rival company. When confronted, you say you just wanted to test out the other job in case it was better. So yes or no, did this really happen? And we will tell you at the end if they did happen or not. But for now, just kind of guessing. Then we have scenario 3, asking the employer if you can borrow the company vehicle to drive home and get your fishing pole as you would like to go fishing in the pond at the condo where you're cutting grass. Do you think that really happened, yes or no? So that one, we have about 75% saying no, 25% saying yes.
Wow.
And scenario 4, texting the employer on the plane to say that you will be away for 2 weeks visiting family. Did that really happen, yes or no? That one, we're split.
I see in the chat someone said it should not happen. That's great.
But most of them are pretty split between yes and no, except for scenario 3. We have it's more decisive that most people are thinking no. So a couple more seconds here just to get your answers in if you haven't voted yet, and then we will end the poll. Okay. So we'll end the poll there and you can see the results. So for answer 1, we were pretty close. Answer 2, pretty close between yes and no. Answer 3, 74% thought no, 26% thought yes. And number 4 was split as well. So actually, it was kind of a trick activity because all of the questions had the same answer, which was yes. So all of these things actually did happen. They're examples of things that happened with students who were at work or on co-op placements. And of course, these are all examples of things not to do. None of these things would be acceptable behavior for the workplace. So that's why it's sometimes worth mentioning and bringing it up, because sometimes we think, well, would somebody really do these things? But believe it or not, yes, these things do happen, which is why it's worth going through some of these Canadian workplace expectations just to make sure we all know what's expected of us in the workplace.
Awesome. So what exactly do employers expect from you? So we're going to go through and explore the qualities employers say make a valuable employee.
Okay, so the first one that we'll talk about is valued employees understand the workplace culture. So success with a company can be about fitting in with the company, but what does that really mean? So part of that could be researching the company. So for example, learning more about their mission, their vision, and their values. And sometimes you can read that information online. You could follow the company on social media, maybe read about them in the news as well to find out what they're all about. Usually the mission will define the company's business objectives. Their vision statement will describe the desired future position of the company. And then their values would be things that are the company's top priorities and their core beliefs. If you like, you can also learn things about the history of the company, learn about their products and services, what kind of customers do they target. All those things will help you to do well at the company, and probably you'll do some of those things before you even apply there. That's what we would suggest so that you can help prepare your resume and your cover letter as well. Another part of this is understanding the business etiquette. So this will help you fit in with things like being on time, not calling in sick at the last minute, and things like bathing every day and wearing clean clothes can definitely go a long way.
So valued employees communicate effectively. So communication means a number of different things. That can be your written, verbal, and your body language. Employers expect you to always be polite and professional in all communication. So communicating effectively in both verbally and written is very important, and not being able to effectively communicate in English can be a barrier to success in the workplace. So you want to make sure you're always being clear and concise when communicating. And if you're not sure you understand something, always ask questions and for clarification. Use polite and professional language, and make sure you're being a good listener as well. Make sure they have 100% of your attention, your genuine interest and patience, and make sure to not interrupt other conversations, to wait your turn to talk. And be aware and understand body language. A large proportion of communication is actually your body language. So just be mindful of your facial expressions, eye contact, hand gestures, and postures. And always look on ways to continuously work and improve your communication skills.
Perfect. Okay, so the next one is valued employees are reliable. So we'd like to ask you a question in the chat. What does being reliable really mean? So can you think of any examples? How can an employee demonstrate reliability on the job, and what does that look like? So we'll give you a couple minutes to think about that, and if you can think of an example, feel free to pop it in the chat there.
Okay.
Okay, so definitely a few things coming in.
Yeah.
So I'm seeing things like meeting your deadlines, being on
Always
time,
on time.
following the rules, being honest and truthful, being punctual, being responsible if the employer is absent, being on time, being grateful, being ready to work. Absolutely. Being dependable, trustworthy, being there in a crisis situation, following your word, being committed, being respectful, telling the truth, giving 100%. These are all excellent examples. Ethics. Absolutely. So great examples. Thank you so much for everyone for sharing. Just a note, I did see a couple comments in the chat asking if we can share this PDF, and it will be shared after the presentation, so no worries about that.
Yeah.
A few more coming in here, being trustworthy, not being a problem in the absence of the employer, so the employer can trust you when they're away. Someone said, don't do anything that was done by anyone on the Office TV show. That's a good point. That's pretty good. Taking ownership. Okay,
These are
awesome.
all awesome.
These are great answers. So I'm going to go on to a bit more information here. So what does being reliable really mean? So definitely all those examples that everyone has shared are very good examples of being reliable. Some of the key things about being reliable are definitely your attendance and your punctuality. Those are two of the main ones. And in fact, attendance and punctuality are two of the reasons that people might lose employment. It doesn't matter how good you are at the job or how skilled, if you're not there and you're not showing up to do the job, right? So if you're absent from the job, it puts pressure on the employer to try to find someone to cover your work. It also may have the employer wondering if you have abandoned the job and if you even want the job. So by showing up every day, you show that you care about keeping your job. Punctuality as well, very similar, is very important. Even just being 10 minutes late, if you're consistently 10 minutes late, can have a big impact because that will add up over the week. Being late can possibly put production schedules back. It could cost the company money, and it can cause resentment among your coworkers if you're known for always holding up projects or always being late. So being on time also is very important. And organizing your schedule and doing what you need to do to make sure you can get there on time is very important. If you cannot make it to work or there's something out of your control that will cause you to be a few minutes late, communication is key. Try to get employer approval ahead of time if you need to miss work. Always report to them if you're sick or if you're running behind for some reason. Communication is key because then it allows them to try and fill your position for the day or cover that work that you may have missed. So the employer should be able to trust you with anything and everything that is assigned to you and know that you can actually follow through and get it done. And being reliable can also mean showing up ready to work. So showing up with the proper tools and equipment, dressed properly for the job, having gotten enough sleep, and just ready to go and ready to work. So all those are very important aspects of what Canadian employers will expect from you.
So, valued employees dress appropriately. This matters to employers because what you wear and how you present yourself is a reflection of the company. Sometimes you may have a company uniform, so you want to make sure that it's clean, free of wrinkles, and make sure that by looking professional, you're helping your employer and business be seen as professional. It should matter to you because every day you are making an impression on someone. And this, having a clean and kept uniform or dressing appropriately, abiding by the dress code, shows that you are confident and care about yourself, and you want to make sure you're wearing clothes that are clean and appropriate for the job. We're also making sure your hair is clean and well kept, minimal makeup and minimal jewelry, and hygiene is very important here. So you want to make sure you're showering daily. So just have some examples here of attire. So for more of a business professional look, you may want to have some of these basic items to put together a full dress look. So that could include a collared shirt and blazer. There you can see some different examples of shoes and basic color items. The point items for accessories, you don't want to have too much bling, nothing too fancy or distracting like logos. And the point color examples can also reflect the company colors. We have an example here of Fanshawe RBC. So these are kind of a more business professional attire. So you always want to make sure if you're starting a new job and they're not providing uniforms, of course, what is the dress code? So that's something you want to look into and make sure you are well prepared for that. And if they say business casual, this is a great example of what that means. So often khakis, a golf shirt, and you want to be mindful of necklines, ladies, on some of the shirts. We want to avoid low tank tops. And again, just making sure your clothes are clean, well kept, and you're practicing basic hygiene with showering and making sure your hair is well groomed and out of your face as well. So there's some examples of some color patterns as well.
Okay, so the next expectation is that valued employees will demonstrate initiative and motivation. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. So I'm just wondering, how many people here have ever worked with a coworker or worked with a group member that you would say was toxic? So you could raise your hand or even just type in the chat if that's something that you have ever experienced.
Yeah, me.
So people are saying, yes, I have experienced that. Me raising their hands.
Yeah.
And what do you think can make a person toxic or difficult to work with? Maybe impatient.
The attitude.
Attitude. Negative attitude, poor attitude, seeing a lot of that. Procrastination, things like that. Impatient. Absolutely. So definitely a lot of things associated with their attitude, right? It can make somebody difficult to work with, disrespectful. So the other side of that, what are some things that can make somebody very positive or someone that you really enjoy working with? Someone who's easy to work with. What would you say are some of those qualities? Someone who smiles, I see here. Yeah. Someone with good communication, someone who's encouraging, flexible, friendly. Lots of people saying good communication, respectful, takes accountability, friendly, good people skills, open-minded, motivating, good listener. Absolutely. So there's so many different things, right, that can go into making someone a coworker who you really like or who's positive. But we'd suggest one of the big things there is your attitude, right? Showing enthusiasm, having a positive attitude are very important. They will help create a positive work environment for everyone. And your attitude also reflects on the employer and the business. So even when you're meeting with clients or promoting that employer at meetings or out in public, that positive attitude will actually help for the company reputation as well. Another part of this is taking initiative. So rather than waiting for someone to ask you to do something, within reason, trying to volunteer or take initiative to do the things that need to be done. When there's so much work to do, employers will really appreciate it if you're able to step up and take on extra work. And we also have here being open-minded and flexible. So employers might ask you to stretch your skills a little bit. You might have to take on a new challenge that you haven't had to do before. Or this can also mean accepting constructive criticism. So maybe your typical way of doing something isn't exactly how this employer wants things done. So being open to that, being willing to adapt and change if needed, can really go a long way with the employer. It shows that you're not just set with one way of doing things, and you can take on new challenges and learn how to do things differently as well. So maintain a proactive state of mind at your job every single day, as you're always under observation.
Okay, so valued employees yearn to learn. So you want to be able to demonstrate that you're open to learning new skills. What opportunities lie at the heart of your obstacles? The willingness to learn new things is an essential quality in an employer's expectations list. Again, you want to ask if you don't understand and always take responsibility for your mistakes. This matters to employers because change is constant. Whether it's a new computer system or an idea of how to do things differently, employers need employees who are able and willing to learn and adapt to change. Taking responsibility for mistakes shows that you are willing to learn the right way to do the job. It should matter to you because learning is actually a survival skill. Not only can learning new skills help you succeed in your current job, if it's a part-time or a placement, but it can help you in your future career, adapt to new skills, learning new things. And sometimes we also learn by trial and error. So we only learn from our mistakes if we take responsibility for them. So why it matters to employers is employers would prefer you asked and did the job right the first time rather than do the task wrong and find out how to do it later, because time is money, of course. And by asking questions, it shows that you are interested and want to do a good job. It's always important to take initiative and learn on your own time as well. You don't always want to wait and rely on your employer for your upgrading and professional development. Another great way to kind of take initiative with learning new skills is as a Fanshawe student right now, you actually have access to LinkedIn Learning. So that can really help you kind of polish some of your skills or learn new things as well. So something you may want to look into on your own time.
Absolutely. Sorry, I moved the slide too soon and I couldn't figure out how
All good. No, it worked out.
Perfect. Okay, but here's the next one. So the next one is valued employees adhere to health and safety. So health and safety, of course, it sounds like a dry or boring topic, but it is very important to talk about because unfortunately we do have workplace fatalities or workplace accidents that happen every year that can be very serious and cause emotional hardship as well as time and money. So it is always good to go over your knowledge of health and safety. A new job is a chance for a fresh start, but every job has hazards no matter how safe it may look. So the health and policies are there for a reason, and it's very important to know about them. So in Ontario, we have the Occupational Health and Safety Act, and you have rights and responsibilities under that act. So some of your rights would be the right to participate. So this means identifying anything that you think would be a workplace hazard and reporting it so that it can be resolved through your health and safety committee. You also have the right to know about any hazards to which you may be exposed. And many times this will involve training in WHMIS or Workplace Hazardous Materials and Information Systems. And you have the right to refuse work that you believe is dangerous. And the Act prohibits reprisals taken against workers who exercise these rights. In addition to that, you also have duties and responsibilities under the Occupational Health and Safety Act. So this means you need to take responsibility for your personal health and safety and not behave in a way that would endanger you or others. You are required to use any equipment, protective devices, and clothing that is required by the employer. And you're required to report to your employer or supervisor any missing or defective equipment and report any known workplace hazard or violation. as well as not remove any ineffective, not remove or make ineffective any protective device. So these are always good things to know about. Some workplaces we may consider more dangerous than others, but even an office setting can have its hazards and have its dangers. So always be aware, try to be involved with your health and safety committee if possible, and keep your safety top of mind in your job.
Perfect. So valued employees work together. So teamwork makes the dream work. Employers want people who work well with others to achieve a common goal, and valued team members respect each other. So just in the chat now, I want you to tell me what words you would like your coworkers to use to describe you 6 weeks in on the job. What are some of the words? Patient, good, hardworking, dependable, I saw, dedicated, respectful, easygoing, kind, reliable. Yeah. I see punctual and hardworking too, and trustworthy, and fun to work with. Absolutely. Honest, intelligent, creative, modesty, friendly, learner, punctual, lots of punctuals. Responsible and hardworking. Great. These are all awesome. I'm just going to give you some more examples of why it's important to work effectively as a team. It matters to employers because employers want employees who work well together to ensure that tasks are completed faster and often more efficiently. Like we keep saying, time is money. Why this matters to you is being part of a team is a good feeling. It also contributes to a more pleasant and welcoming work environment for everyone. So communication, planning, problem solving, and negotiating are some of the skills that you'll want to develop. So if you work on these skills on your own, your teamwork skills should improve as well. Employers expect employees to be respectful and friendly to all, show interest in others, but avoid gossip, okay? And greet and introduce one another. Always try to make others feel welcome, and you should be successful.
Okay, and then we have valued employees are honest and trustworthy. So employers will often need to trust their employees with various aspects of their business. So this could be things like company property, machinery or equipment, maybe a company vehicle or phone. This can be with clients, right? Sometimes you may be trusted independently to speak with clients and obtain their business. This can even be with things like money. Maybe you're doing cash deposits for the company or managing and paying bills for the company, for example. So there's lots of different things a company may trust you with. And of course, another thing that you may be trusted with is information. So sometimes through your job, you may have access to sensitive or confidential information about people. For example, maybe their medical records or their financial records. So things like ethics, confidentiality policies, intellectual property, and permission can come into play here as well, and being sure that you're following all the ethical considerations that you need to. So does anyone have examples of maybe it's a piece of equipment, maybe it's a company phone, but something that you previously had to be trusted with in the workplace that you can share?
It's a company laptop.
Yeah, that's a great example because a lot of companies might have a laptop or some piece of electronics that they may be trusting you with. Money is a common one. Research data, inventory, a MacBook. Strategy and storyline for a TV show. Wow, very cool. Company codes and data. Yeah, that's a great example. Keys to the workplace, that's a big one. Being a key holder is a big responsibility. The company strategy, that's a great example too, because that's something that can be confidential and they probably don't want being put out there for their competitors or other people to see. Documents, client information, company credit cards, great example. Statistics. Yep, great examples here that people are sharing. A list of high-profile customers, being given more customers or clients to handle. Computers, printers, passwords, banking info. Wow, so all kinds of different things that people have been responsible for, right? Databases. Great. So these are all big responsibilities, right? That it's really important you show you are aware, you're responsible, and that you're doing everything in your power to handle this equipment and this data with integrity. Another part of this is your online activity and your phone use. So using work time to actually do work. And we can probably all think of examples of times where maybe you've seen someone at work who's using work to do other things, right? And it's something that it is good to be aware of. So for example, this can include things like your online activity or your phone use, right? So of course, we do get breaks and things like that throughout the day, but this would be doing these things during work time, and instead of using that for work, be doing personal things, right? So usually the employer isn't watching us every minute of every day, and in fact, we don't want them to have to watch us that closely, right? But the hope is that they can trust us and know that we actually will be working. And as an individual, sometimes that means being careful with phone use and online activity to make sure you're actually using your work time for work. So these are all really good things to consider.
Okay, so valued employees represent the company professionally. So I have a question for you all to just enter the answers in the chat again. What do you feel it means to represent the company professionally? I'll give you a few minutes to answer. I see honor. Yeah, that's a great answer. Responsibility. Code of conduct. Yes. That's great. To be a great ambassador. That's a great answer. Not acting out of character. Being the company's first impression. Great communication. Customer service. Absolutely. Presenting in seminars. Yeah. To be well versed with company policies and reputation, communication skills. Good, yeah, represent all values of the company, absolutely. So living those company policies and their, sorry, the word just escaped me. Christina, maybe you can help me out.
Like procedures?
Mission statement, yeah.
Oh, mission
Sorry.
statement, yeah. Okay.
Vision, realizing company vision and mission. Sorry, I don't know how that escaped me. The unknown face, absolutely. So these are great answers. Providing good service and meeting deadlines, absolutely. So I'm just going to dive a little deeper here into the presentation. So employees represent the company to the public. So employers value staff who are able to speak positively and knowledgeably about the company to others. So that includes your online presence, like Christina was mentioning as well. We actually were just discussing, we heard in the news that somebody was actually fired from their place of work for filming TikToks on the job. So you want to just be mindful of what you're doing at work and your online presence. What are you talking about, coworkers or the company on social media? You obviously want to avoid that, and just how you appear, because again, you are the face of the company as well. You never want to discuss how much clients spend, and always practice professionalism in conversations and demonstrate respect. Obey by the code of conduct, and your level of professionalism should be the same internally and outwardly. So looking at respect and professionalism, the more you put in to practice these points, the better your chances will be to create a positive reputation for yourself. So this can ultimately translate into raises and promotions, chances to work on more assignments that you enjoy and might be more interested in, and the less likely to be downsized when layoffs are being considered, and just gaining the respect of your peers and upper management, and also perhaps getting a great reference from them. You can also benefit from your own feelings of self-worth and dignity, and you can keep yourself marketable for the future. All of these are very good reasons to be as professional as possible on the job.
Absolutely. Okay, and then we would like to suggest that your career begins the first day of college. So when you start college, this is a great time to really work on building these habits that we've talked about. You know, following health and safety, showing that you're willing to learn, being proactive, taking initiative. So I know sometimes it's tempting to think, I'll worry about all of those things once I actually get a job, right? That's when I'm really going to focus and show my positive attitude and really start being on time. However, all these habits that we've talked about are things that sometimes it can take a lot of work to really build and really get good at them. So college is a great time to start building and practicing those habits so that when you get to work, those things will just be like second nature to you, and it will help you to really excel in the workplace. The other thing to think about as well is your classmates right now could be your future coworkers or your future network as you go into your professional career. And your professors are part of your network as well, and you might be asking them to be a reference for you. So you want to make a good impression now on the people around you here at the college, because as you continue on, they'll become part of your network and they might become your references as well. So you want them to see the very best of you. Start building these habits now, as it will only serve you well as you move forward in your career.
Absolutely. So we'll be taking questions. I know people are asking if we're going to share the presentation. I believe they will be shared is it in the chat box or sent out. I'm not 100%, but you're definitely going to be getting a copy of the presentation. And the questions, if they could just relate to the presentation, that would be great. We can answer any of those. Some of the questions just might be beyond our scope as it relates to work permits and things like that. So yeah, feel free to ask any questions.
Okay. I think we explained everything perfectly.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, here's one coming in now.
The current impact of Corona on part-time jobs in Canada for students. Okay. So although some places might be, we just shared a great article actually on our Facebook yesterday. I don't know if you saw that, Christina, but a lot of places are actually hiring right now. LinkedIn has a great resource for who's hiring in Canada. We share hundreds of part-time and full-time jobs on our job site, which is part of your FOL resource. Places like grocery stores, Walmart, Amazon, places like that, they're always hiring for part-time work as well. However, some jobs may have been impacted by Corona as well but we are noticing a steady stream of part-time jobs coming in for sure.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. So of course, we've definitely heard of many industries being impacted by COVID, but there are a lot of part-time job opportunities still coming through, like Christina mentioned, groceries, retail, some food services, some manufacturing, even some health screening type roles. We've seen that as well. Driver delivery positions, and even there's been some volunteer opportunities, virtual ones that I've seen. So I've seen some students volunteer to call and check in on a senior who's maybe living alone, or deliver groceries for someone and things like that. So definitely there have been still part-time opportunities. There's a question about building confidence to give the first interview. That's such a great question, because interviews can be so nerve-wracking, right? Especially if it's your first interview. But we do have some resources for you in career services to help with that. For example, we have a great virtual workshop on preparing for the interview. I highly recommend it. It will go through a lot of the common interview questions and how to answer. And then we also have a resource called Interview Stream, which maybe we can share the link. So interview stream is a way that you can practice online for your interviews, and you can also book with your consultant to practice as well. So there are some good options to prepare.
I'm going to share interview stream here. Hang on.
Oh,
Sorry.
perfect. Okay.
Okay. Putting it here in the chat. So you just need to create an account. Of course, it's free as well. So,
I saw a couple of questions about IT jobs in London. So as I did mention, I am the consultant for the School of Information Technology. So I have been working with a lot of the IT students and grads. So we do still have quite a few IT opportunities coming in. And IT is definitely a field that has still continued to have job opportunities and do well throughout the pandemic. So if you are in one of the IT programs, I can put my email in the chat as well if you want to talk more about your program and opportunities that you're looking for and things like that. So I'll just put my email in the chat here.
So I'm just looking through the questions as well, and I see, apart from LinkedIn, which are the other sites we can use for job searching in Canada? So we mentioned our career services job site, which you will have access to through your Fanshawe online. Definitely look there, as well as Indeed. Night Hunter is a good one, and the jobbank.gc, the Canada Service Canada Job Bank is another good one as well. Especially when you're looking for part-time jobs. And again, using your social media too, using like the hashtag, is it Jobs London, Ontario, LDNONT, that should bring up some different, like if there's different hiring events. And if you follow us on social media, we're always posting when we know of different job fairs or different opportunities as well that are doing more mass hiring, with more opportunities for our students. So definitely follow us on social media as well if you're not already doing so.
I'm just going to try and share in the chat a document that has a list of websites that you can use to look for work as well. So I just tried to drop that in the chat. Hopefully that worked. It does have a list of a few of the websites that we recommend.
That's perfect. It's also on Fanshawe Online as well, I believe, too, under the Career Services tab. So I also included my email. I saw someone was asking for our email addresses. Christina, I think you included yours as well. I put it in the chat as well. Lots of IT questions, Christina.
Yeah. Sorry, some of them are going by so fast.
Yeah.
Christina and Christina, it's Caitlin from International. Do you mind if I jump in and answer a question that I've seen a couple times?
I was going to ask you if you would, because I think I know the answer, but I'm not confident. It's not my area of expertise. So yeah.
So I've seen the question. At the moment, we are in India taking online classes. Will we be able to work part-time online while in India? So you can work in India while you're taking your online classes at Fanshawe or wherever you are in the world. You can work locally. That's fine. If you're asking if you can get an online job with like a Canadian company, Probably not. I don't know of many positions that would be part-time and online and doable from abroad for a student. Like that's probably not going to happen. But if you have a local position, like if you're working in a store or a company at home and you're also doing your studies, as long as you can manage that time, that's fine.
Perfect. Thank you. I saw that a few times too, so that's great.
And then I guess just to follow up on that, there's a question here saying, well, is that going to affect our ability to get a full-time job or a co-op in Canada when we do arrive in Canada? I would suggest using your online time while you're abroad this time to build up your resumes and your skills in other ways, like they've been talking about in this session and in the previous session. So use this time to go to the career services workshops and make a Canadian resume so that when you get here, it's done. Practice the interview techniques, take advantages of all of the workshops they offer, get involved, maybe volunteering or joining a club online while you're abroad so you can have that kind of Canadian experience on your resume. And then when you do get to Canada, you'll just be ready to kind of hit the ground running and start applying for jobs there. So you can definitely still make this time work for you, maybe just in a different sense. And that's what all of our presenters have kind of been speaking to today.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So a couple of people were asking about part-time jobs in IT, and Vatsal had mentioned it can be a bit difficult. So it does depend a little bit, depends what kind of area of IT you're looking in as well. Sometimes there could be like a part-time phone tech support or even an electronics store part-time job type thing. But it really depends. I'd say the majority of students are most successful finding part-time jobs in maybe retail customer service. That tends to be a lot more common and a lot more accessible. That being said, I have seen some students who have worked, part-time in retail, but then they volunteered doing some sort of computers or tech support with a nonprofit. So that's another option that you may have as well if you want to start building some of your tech skills. So my cat's about to come through here. If you can start building, some of your tech skills with a Canadian company and volunteer and add that to your resume. If you're not able to find a part-time job in IT. So it is something that we can talk about and work with once you're ready to job search. Thanks. My cat's very friendly, so he hears voices and he wants to come by and see what's going on.
I see somebody said how many rounds we can expect for interview. That really depends. Sometimes it's just one simple interview. Sometimes there's an initial pre-screening and then you're interviewed by more people, perhaps like more upper management and supervisors as well. So it could be a series of interviews. Sometimes there's group interviews too. It really depends. For part-time jobs, though, I would say it's typically just one interview. I'm not sure if you'd agree, Christina. Maybe two, maybe an initial phone interview and then maybe a Skype or in person. And what to do if you get bullied at work. So you always want to make sure, like Christina mentioned too in the presentation, that you're familiar with the company code of conduct. And your workplace rights. So definitely maybe try talking to the individual, or if need be, I would take it to management and let them know and try to document things. Always try to demonstrate respect and avoid, you don't want to be a bully back. So definitely you may need to talk to management about what's going on, because that's just not something that you need to tolerate.
Yeah, absolutely. And hopefully, maybe you can talk it through with a career consultant or a friend, and even being aware of what options you may have with the employer as well. So, workplace conflict is definitely a common thing, that can happen. So there are different options you can go through to deal with it, right? Like speaking with that person, maybe with management as well. And there's advice and resources to help you deal with that kind of situation too.
Like you mentioned too, you're always going to work with toxic people, right? So you just need to talk to others and find rise above it, but if it's really depending on the severity of the issue, you definitely have options.
So someone said, do interviewers ask tricky questions? So that's a great question. There could be some difficult interview questions. You know, honestly, it is really good to prepare for some of the common interview questions. Again, as I said, attending our workshop, we will go through some of the common questions, including difficult questions and our strategies for answering, and then practicing as well. So whether you use Interview Stream or whether you contact your career consultant to do a practice interview, we can help you practice for those difficult questions so that you feel prepared for how to answer them and what to say.
Absolutely.
There's usually a strategy for answering most interview questions, even the tough ones. So I think it's just a matter of being prepared for those questions, practicing some answers, because most answers do have a good way to answer them, as long as you're prepared and you have some time to think about it.
Perfect. And I see a question here. Are there any online jobs for international business management course? And from Apple, I am your career consultant, so I certainly get in touch with me. I can help you. We can look at some of the opportunities out there for your program if you're looking for full-time work, or if you're looking for part-time as well. I did leave my email in the chat. I can leave it again though if needed.
I'm going to put mine as well. So I know I got a few private messages throughout. I'm so sorry. I don't know if I got to all of them. If I didn't see your private message, just send an email to my Fanshawe email address, because I definitely will get to that and respond to that. I think I just saw a question here about a volunteer website. So yes, there is a really good one. I'm going to try and share it. Pillar Nonprofit. Is that what you would probably recommend as well, Christina?
I would. Pillar Nonprofit is great for local volunteer opportunities. We also do post some volunteer opportunities on our job site as well.
I'm just going to share that in the chat. So Pillar Nonprofit, it does have a list of different nonprofits and registered charities in the London area that share volunteer postings, and then we do have some on our job site as well. So it's definitely a great starting point to start with Pillar if you're interested in volunteering. It's a great option.
I'll just add to that, if you're looking for on-campus or Fanshawe volunteer opportunities, I would suggest contacting the Fanshawe Student Union and getting involved with their clubs or associations. The international office has a list of volunteers that you can join, and whenever we need students for a project, that's who we tend to reach out to first. So you can email me, or you can email just international@fanshawec.ca, which I'll type here for everyone, and ask to be put on the list. And also talk to your program coordinators, talk to your teachers, especially in some areas like IT, where they might have extra projects that they're looking for volunteers to get involved with. And that's a great way to kind of build that network and develop your skills a little bit too. So there's no one way to find opportunities. You just kind of have to keep your ears open, keep your eyes open, and always say yes.
Perfect. And how are we for time, Caitlin? Are we the next sessions?
So we've got about 5 minutes left and time for maybe 1 or 2 more questions.
Perfect. So I see something about etiquette rules to make conversation in a Canadian way with coworkers that you don't know well. So you could just, I would say just start off by asking, maybe how long they've worked with the organization, what they like about it, things like that. Keep them pretty open-ended. You want to avoid asking, for etiquette here in Canada, I don't know what you think, Christina, but you want to avoid overly personal questions as well. And you don't want to come off confrontational. And just really take that time to listen and get to know them as well. You can simply start by talking about how long have you worked here, getting to know what they do in the company as well is a great way, and maybe asking them questions like if they're a student, where do they go, what program they're studying, and things like that as well.
Yeah, even small talk. It sounds so obvious, but it does help, the weather, what did you do this last weekend? What are you doing next weekend? Those little types of questions are really easy, simple conversation starters as well. And, especially if you are starting somewhere and you're new, you can ask questions, right? Because people understand when you're new that you're going to have a lot of questions. So sometimes that's an opportunity for you to approach someone and ask, where do I get some supplies? Where is the lunchroom? Where do I hang my coat? Little things like that.
Yeah.
Can sometimes help you start conversations too.
Small talk is key. You're right. The weather, it's such a common thing, but you could, with Canada, we get all the seasons, right? So simply, oh, it's cold. It's a chilly one today. Just talking about the change in temperature, things like that. But again, you want to avoid asking overly personal information right away.
Can co-ops convert into permanent jobs? I think it depends on the situation. It's definitely something that has happened before and could happen. It doesn't happen every time, right? It's not a guarantee that would happen, but it is possible. So it just depends on the company and if they're able to hire you on. So, but even if they are not able to hire you on, it's definitely still valuable having that co-op and having that experience.
Yeah, we see it happen, but again, it's not a guarantee. So
this is a funny question that someone was asked in an interview. How can you sell a 2018 calendar in 2019?
I see that now. That's really
it's possible. It's possible you could get asked a question like that's to make you kind of think on your feet, right? And that type of question, I imagine as well, is trying to get you to show some of your sales skills and put you on the spot a little bit. So I think a lot of times that's what questions like that are testing. They want to see if you can think on your feet and come up with an answer in the moment, right?
And it's okay to pause and think about that before just blurting out an answer, right? Just try to think of kind of a plan too. So you can't prepare for every single scenario.
So we're just running out of time here. So I think we'll stop the questions for now, but both Christinas have shared their emails in the chat. So if you have anything that you'd like to follow up with, I'm sure they'd be happy to get your emails. Thank you to both of you. This was a great session. We really appreciate it. And for all of the students, we are going to take a 30-minute break. After the break, we'll have our employer panel. We have 4 local employers, 4 companies from different industries, as well as a representative from the London Economic Development Corporation. So that's one of the resources that we've been really kind of touting over the last 2 days as a great resource for students who want to understand the industries and job opportunities in London. So the panel is going to be great. If you're able to stay awake or stay available for that panel, I would highly recommend it. And that will be starting in half an hour at 11:30 a.m. London time, half an hour wherever you are from there. So again, thank you to Christina and Christina, and hopefully we will see you all soon. See you in half an hour.
Thank you.
All right. Welcome back, everyone. Good afternoon here who are in Canada. Good evening, good night, good morning, everybody, wherever you guys are joining us from. My name is Priyank. I work at Fanshawe International as a digital marketer. And welcome to last session of Fanshawe Works. Hope you are finding the information really helpful. And this is the session. If you have not attended any of the others one, this is the one that you should be attending. So please take notes and get an idea about from our employers. So we will have 4 different employers from the city, from different divisions and different groups joining us. And Rebecca Summerfield here is going to be the moderator of the session. But before we start, I just want to mention a couple of things. First, at the end of this session, we will have a chance to do question and answers. So hold on to your questions to type in the chat box. Aside from that, from the yesterday and today, all the sessions that we have done, all of you will be getting a presentation, and any notes or any files that we have shared during the session, you will be getting those later this week, along with the recording of each session. So no need to worry about the PDF files or PowerPoint. You all will be receiving them later on this week. And again, yesterday, by the end of the session, we did a survey regarding the feedback for this workshop. So we will be doing it again today. And also you will get a chance to win 2 more online gift cards for Google Play, Amazon, or any of your choice. At the end of this session, I will be sharing a link for the survey feedback. So please do fill out the survey. It really helps us to improve these workshops for new students just like you for the upcoming intakes. So we will really appreciate it. And from here on, I would hand over to Rebecca to continue with the session of employer panel for Fanshawe Works. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Priyank. Hey, everybody. Hope you've been enjoying this this adventurous 2 days to kind of show you what you can expect once you get here to Canada, and all of the amazing supports that we have for you through Fanshawe College, whether or not you're here or not. So today, what we're doing is we're going to be talking to some amazing employers. We are expecting 2 more, but we're not going to delay for the 2 that were here on a timely manner. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce them. And then Dan and Robert, if you'll say a little bit about what your business does, I thought it would be better coming from each of you as opposed to me trying to paraphrase and tell them about what you do. So I'll start by introducing, we'll go with Robert Collins first. So Robert Collins is the Director of Workforce Development for the London Economic Development Council, and he'll tell you a little bit about what he does.
Thanks very much, Rebecca, and I'm very pleased to join you. I came here a number of years ago as an international student and had to find my way. So I'm very pleased to try to help guide you through the navigation of finding great employment here in Canada's London. I'm with the Local Economic Development Corporation. We are actually a not-for-profit organization created to specifically attract new business to London and help businesses grow. And we do that providing consulting and helping services to businesses in 5 key sectors that we believe are going to be great economic contributors to London. So part of my great thing that I enjoy about my work is I get to see job seekers and keen talent like you, but also meet with a lot of hiring companies. So I'm very pleased to try to share some of the perspectives I've learned from them over the last little while.
Thank you, Robert. Yeah, Robert is always a tried and true here. We always enjoy having him to our various events. So thank you, Robert, for coming today.
Rebecca keeps me in line.
I try. It's not always easy, but I really try. So then we'll go with Dan. So welcome, Dan. So Dan Towers is the Director of Digital Marketing at Arcane, and he's going to tell us a little bit about what he does and what Arcane is.
Hi there. So normally I'd be in the office, but of course with COVID, we're all working from home. So nice to see you all. So as Rebecca mentioned, my name is Dan. I'm the Director of Digital Marketing at a advertising agency here in London. So we do have offices in London, Toronto, and Calgary, and our operations in those 3 offices do fall under my direct supervision. So in my role, I oversee our digital advertising efforts across the Google suite of products. So people that are doing search advertising, YouTube advertising, display. And then we also have a department of team members that are focused on social media advertising. So working with Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all those fun channels too. We have a very strong arm focused on data and analytics. And we combine that all into creating advertising campaigns for our clients. So there's a huge roster of clients in our portfolio. Many of them are in the e-commerce or retail space, which is thriving right now during the impact of the world from COVID. On the other hand, though, I do work a lot in health and fitness, which hasn't been doing as well since gyms can't open. It's been a lot more difficult for people that way. So it's been quite an interesting past, I guess, almost 6 months now, as things have just changed so significantly. So provide a lot of strategic recommendations and support for our clients from a marketing perspective. I also do teach at Western University here in London. So I teach digital marketing strategy and social media courses. So I love working with students. I love getting to know people and networking. So I'm really excited to be able to impart any wisdom I can today to help you all out.
Thank you so much, Dan. Very interesting background in light of the whole post-COVID thing. You can see how important it is to have a lot of these skills, especially now, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. And then we do have Jen Castine. If I said your name incorrectly, Jen, I apologize for that. But Jen is the Project and Operations Manager at Endry Paletti Architect, Inc. So she's going to tell us a little bit about her and what her organization does.
So I've been working in architecture for 15 years now, and I've done some of that work in Canada and some in England. So we're fairly similar countries to how we operate. But through those two offices, I've been in contact with people who have been trained in many countries around the world. We've worked with students. Usually we've got at least one co-op student in the office at a time. And we've also recently been hiring a lot of people who come from an education background and then do a course at Fanshawe and then start trying to get into the architectural industry in London. So I've worked with people that are coming from a variety of backgrounds, and hopefully that will help me answer any questions you have today.
Well, thank you so much for that information. So I will just ask if everybody can maybe hold their questions for a little bit, because we are, it's always better to be a little immersed in this sort of conversation. The employers do have a wealth of information, so they may actually end up answering some of your questions. It is hard in this kind of a platform to answer individual questions about individual journeys. We are here to give sort of a high level information for you. Again, without me being in career services, if you have any additional questions that you have for the employers, you can feel free to send them my way, and we can make sure that we get you the information that we can in a timely manner. So the way this will go is I'm going to ask all of the employers questions. So I'm just going to throw it out there. Feel free to jump in and answer the questions. And if you feel like you don't want to answer any particular question, that's okay too. We're not holding you hostage here. We really want you to be engaged and willing to answer these questions. So without further delay, I will start. So this is sort of I'm trying to figure out what's the best question. So this is a two-part question. So the first part of this question is, how important is a resume to an employer? And second part of that question, what is the value in seeing any Canadian work experience on a resume?
I'll start that one. So a resume is probably the most important document that you will create because it's the first impression that the employer gets of you. So we can't see everyone individually who applies for a job, but we do get this brief summary of who you are. So it's really important to start your resume with the experience that makes the most sense for the job you're applying for. Whether that experience is Canadian or from another country doesn't matter so much as long as you explain what it is. So when we get students with international experience, the hardest thing for us is to distinguish between using the same term for different work. But that's something that we're going to get to in the interview process. So when we're just looking at the paperwork, you really need to present your best self, make sure everything is properly spelled, and that nothing on the resume is false. So if you write something on the resume that's maybe a little more indulged than what you can actually perform, when it comes time for the interview, those things are going to come to light anyway. So be honest and just present your best self in your resume.
Yeah, I would definitely add to that that the resume is that most important factor. We work with so many different clients in the world that I'm in. And so when I'm looking for a qualified candidate or somebody I want to bring on, I need that work to be flawless. And from the resume, if I'm seeing that there are errors or it doesn't look as well put together, that might be an indicator to me that that's the type of project work that I might receive if somebody enters into the role. Especially with the resume, you're probably looking at it and rewriting things so many times that you need to have those other eyes on it. In the real world workplace, we always have people that are peer reviewing, managers that are reviewing. So it is a collaborative effort. I think when people approach their resume, they look at it as, oh, I'm doing this on my own, but there's so many services out there. Get people to review it. I know we'll probably be talking a little bit later about networking and those types of connections and that, but reach out to people at businesses and say, hey, could I maybe get in touch with your HR person there and have them review my resume to see if I'd be qualified for a position there? Even if there isn't a role, that can help. I think when it comes to the Canadian work portion, it is valuable to have some Canadian work on your resume if you can. The challenge that you'll find in Canada is we can't just take on internships. Like I get internship requests constantly from people saying, hey, I'll work for free or that. And the Canadian legal system, when it comes to our workforce, just doesn't allow that. There are opportunities though, when it comes to things like volunteering and trying to get experience that way. So I'd say the more of that you can get on your resume is valuable, especially now that things are remote. You can essentially work with different companies all over the world. So we like to see definitely some relevant experience on the resume and being able to customize parts of the resume to the jobs that you're applying for. I know in my industry, there's a lot of routes you can go. You could work in digital marketing as like a technical specialist, or you might want to go into accounts, etc. I wouldn't say you need to have a resume for every single one of those different types of jobs, but you could have a section on the resume, like your summary of qualifications, that you do change a few of those points around to customize a little bit more to the job description. Because as somebody who looks at hundreds of resumes all the time, I want to be able to get a quick glance at your resume and say, yes, this is somebody I need to spend a little bit more time on to review their application. And if that's not clear in the first like 20 seconds that I'm looking at a resume, it might not make it to that bigger consideration phase.
Yes, just to build on the other two panelists' comments, very much it's the first thing an employer does is spends about 20 to 30 seconds glancing at it. So if an error is there, they'll spot it, and they might automatically set it aside if they've got lots of different applicants. The next point is that they're often, what's missing is that job seekers talk about their responsibilities in previous employment, not what they actually contributed or what was the outcome of the work they did. So always suggest that. When it comes to Canadian experience, a lot of you have worked for companies that are using international software, international terminology, or working with very high quality systems in your home country. You tend not to share that information in what you describe. So it's very helpful for you to actually say, if you've used any North American software, if you've been having clients that the companies you were working for were working internationally, to share that information. That gives a much broader perspective about your potential for here. Our employers, by the way, 22% of us in London, Ontario, came from somewhere else. So employers are appreciating more and more, because that percentage is increasing, are appreciating people who have that international experience. Because just as Dan's mentioning, the companies that he's working for are not just providing service to the Canadian market, they're providing services to markets offshore. And that's what most of our companies are doing that. So they're really looking forward to people with that international experience, but they have to be able to articulate it and to interpret it within a North American lens. So hopefully that's helpful as a little bit of a context.
I think that was an amazing, all three answers were fantastic. And it helps to reinforce, I think, for our international population, all of the little workshops that you've done in the last 2 days. Just keep in mind always that me being in career services, we are here to help you all figure out how to answer these questions that these three employers have just presented to us. We are not going to release you out on your own. So just remember, all of the information that you get today, you're not in it by yourself. We are definitely here to help support it. And we don't want you to go into situations feeling ill prepared. We want to make sure that you can put the best foot forward the first time. So another question. As an employer, what advice would you give to students if they're unable to find work in their field?
Yeah, my biggest piece of advice, and I kind of hinted at it before, is try to find volunteer opportunities. There are so many, and especially because the world has changed and people are expecting to work more remote, those are some big opportunities to gain some real experience, especially if you're looking for a Canadian experience. You know, for the example of us living in London, you're no longer required to just look in London with remote work possibilities. And I think nonprofits in particular, they need a lot of support, they need a lot of help. So when you're doing a volunteer opportunity with them, they're going to give you work. Whereas some companies, if you're doing like an internship or a co-op, sometimes that work is administrative or trying to help fill a gap. A lot of these nonprofits have such significant needs and they can give good opportunities. So a good example is within the digital marketing world, Google can provide nonprofits with $10,000 worth of advertising on their search engines a month. And that's quite significant. That's bigger budgets than some of the clients that I work with. But they need people to manage that. And so they'll need volunteers who can help and step in and support on that end. So I would definitely recommend looking at a bunch of nonprofits. There's places like Volunteer, I think Charity Village is one of the names. There's a number of resources out there that you can look at for those opportunities. And I know that they definitely are very willing and eager to get support. And you can find many too that probably align with your interests. So if you're passionate about, you know, women's rights or helping underprivileged youth, there's always nonprofits that are specific and tailored that way. So you can get some more experience that also aligns with something that you're passionate about.
In addition to volunteer experience, which is really valuable, I've worked for a decade in the not-for-profit sector. If you really look at the programs you've taken in your home country, as well as your Fanshawe programs, look at the core skills that you're learning in each of the programs, and then try to map not only to the career goal you have, but are there some other occupations within that sector, or in a sector that works with that sector? Because then you can look at what's called transferable skills. What are those core skills you've learned from the program, and then how could they actually fit in other settings? And I think there's some quite interesting opportunities when you take that approach.
Very good point, Robert. Very good point. Jen, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, to build on Robert's answer, my industry specifically is architecture. And there's lots of people looking for work to be designers and to do the drawings in architecture. But there's very frequently positions on construction sites, for example, which teach you to hands-on do the things that you're going to be drawing when you get into an architecture office. If we see someone with that hands-on experience, that's a definite positive. That goes above experience in an architectural office, just as a co-op term or something like that, as an example. But then also in addition to that, if you find that you have time on your hands while you're looking for work, you want to also make sure that your resume and any other documents that you're applying for are in pristine condition. So if you have a portfolio of your schoolwork, you know that you got an 80% on that project, go back and fix it up. Your employer is not looking to just see what you did in school. We want to see what you can do now. So if you learned something from school and you can improve those drawings before you show an employer, that's even better.
Excellent. And another thing to add to the to the volunteer is it's a reference. It's a Canadian reference for you to be able to use with future employers. It just makes it gives you that extra step up. I know I had a student that was in Fanshawe Works last year. So when she landed here in Canada, I actually had a chance to sit down with her. She was looking for some volunteer activities, and back in her home country, she was a belly dancer teacher. So we brainstormed some of the places that she could contact to offer free belly dancing courses. There's a few extra red tape with bureaucracy and things like that. However, she did end up finding an organization, and she ended up teaching belly dancing to seniors. So that's how she ended up getting some Canadian references, by offering the skills that she already had new to Canada while she was developing some of her Canadian networking. So I thought that was brilliant on her part. And sometimes we have to dig a little bit deeper and think about things a little bit differently. For example, for me, when I got my first opportunity getting into the world of work, it was a volunteer position that I had in high school. That was the difference between me getting the job and somebody else getting the job. So I had volunteered for the school newspaper in high school, so I had some interviewing skills. So coming out of college with a diploma and no experience, I actually had one of my teachers show me that I did have the transferable skills necessary for my volunteer position. So you just never know what that clincher is going to be. So definitely developing a good sense of some volunteer skills that you may have could definitely put you a little bit forward. So speaking of the networking thing, the next question would be, how can students who are either new to Canada or not here yet start building their network?
Let me start a little bit on that one. So if, for instance, you were looking, if some of you know a specific field you want to be involved in, let me use the example just to change it from the who's on the panel at the moment. Say you wanted to work in the area of human resources. Well, there's an organization called the Human Resources Professionals Association. It has a London and district chapter, and it has a student membership and a student club on campus, which employers attend. So in other words, whatever your field, look to see what is the organization you want to be a member of. So if it's going to be in the graphic arts or in architecture, what are those organizations? Do they have professional associations? Do they have local chapters? Do they have meetings? So that would be sort of, is there a student association or chapter on campus, a club to join, where you can start to meet and mingle in those areas? And just to give another aside, going back to for instance, Dan, I'm going to ask you this question. Who are your major suppliers? In other words, in London, do you work with different printing companies and different other suppliers locally? They're also ones that you might want to network with, because often then if Dan was to see you doing a good job with one of those suppliers, that's also your way to get noticed by the host company.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. Like, we work with so many different types of groups. We work with suppliers like printers, as Robert mentioned. We work with videography type teams. We actually work with a significant amount of nonprofits. So kind of going back to that route, you know, a lot of nonprofits are supported and have board members that work in organizations across the city. So that networking piece, I think, is very, very important. I think to Robert's point as well, there's so many different social media groups where these people who have similar skills or work in similar industries work together. So an example of one that I'm a part of is called the London Creative Network, which is on Facebook, and it's free for anybody to join. Oftentimes there's jobs there that maybe aren't specific to my world of marketing, but they might be on creative and graphic design. I would not even be surprised if there was architecture in there, because there are still those overlaps. And you know, using those groups and posting in there and saying, hey, I'm a student, I'm looking for if anybody has, you know, 15 minutes, 30 minutes of their time that I could get to do an informational interview, have somebody look at my resume. I think one of the things, at least I know I'm guilty of, is I was always constantly reaching out for help and trying to build my network. And I felt that people, when they helped me, it's given me the rationale that I need to help others, which is why I'm on this panel today. I want to help. I want people to feel like they can reach out to me. And my point to this question too would be, don't just look at those groups, but look at specific companies that might interest you. You obviously might not know every single detail about the type of work they do, but I love it when I get a student who reaches out to me on LinkedIn or finds my email somewhere and asks, hey, I would like to make a connection with you. Could I get some of your time? Can I meet with you to learn about what you do? Because that way, then you can share about your own experiences. And from there, when I've done that in the past, and I've done that quite heavily with a lot of new immigrants to Canada, from there it can spin off, and you might say, oh, I'm interested in this area. And even if it doesn't speak directly to my day-to-day work, I'll probably know somebody else that I can connect you with. I had that happen recently. A friend of mine who works at Starbucks in Toronto, one of his, he works on the brand side, and he's like, I don't actually know anybody in digital advertising, but I have he has like a mentor-mentee relationship with somebody, and he asked if he could connect to me. And so then I met with him and I looked at his resume. So I think there's a lot of opportunities. You just need to be proactive and reach out to them, because then you'll be top of mind. Because for myself, I might not have a role that I'm hiring for right away, but if I know who you are, then when I'm looking to fill that role and I think that you might be a good candidate for it, maybe I just reach out to you and we have that conversation about it too, because a lot of jobs can be got from networking. It's not just applying and submitting your resume into this abyss that you're hoping to hear back from people. Oftentimes having those connections or those referrals go very, very far. And we've set up mock interviews for people before. We've done resume reviews with our HR team for people if they're interested. It's all just about asking. And I think that's the benefit of Canada too, is people will help. Don't underestimate that power of kindness, and hoping that people will spare some of their time to help you. I bet they will.
In addition to the professional organizations and the social media groups, which are great places to market, don't forget about the events hosted by the school. Fanshawe College will often host events where they have employers come, or they'll have student groups where there'll be a presenter. If you're a regular face that shows up at those groups, then you're going to make those connections as well. You share your name, say who you are when you meet people. I've gone to presentations where students have asked for business cards. So when it comes time for co-op placement or graduation, then they're writing me and saying, I'm so-and-so, we met at this presentation. And to know that your person that's looking for employment is willing to take the time to try and learn at these school hosted events means a lot as well. So it's not just knowing a name when you show up at events and things like professional associations, you can volunteer your time, lets people know what you can do as well.
All amazing points. Yes,
Rebecca, just a quick addition. One thing I'm going to suggest, and one thing I want you to try to avoid. The first is, if you go on to ledc.com and go to the very first thing about London, you will find a listing of some of the networking groups, by the way, as well as some other useful advice. The thing I'd like you to avoid is, after you've arrived at Fanshawe, yes, you will want to meet some of the people from your own home country, but please don't let it just end there. Because it's really important that you get to mix and mingle with other groups that are here. That then enriches your experience and increases your network. But it's very tempting to stay in your own cultural bubble rather than getting out to sort of meet some of those others. So that's the thing that I would suggest that you might want to try to avoid.
Yeah, and that's a good point. And not only will it enrich your experiences, it enriches mine. It enriches people like me who've never really been anywhere in the world. I really enjoy meeting people from other cultures. I learn a lot about not only myself, but I learn a lot about the world that way. So that's a very good point, Robert. Excellent. So a couple of things that I took away from this excellent question is, don't be afraid to ask. So if you need something or if you need help, Canadians will generally drop what they're doing and try to help you, but no one is necessarily going to come up to you, tap you on the shoulder, or I guess not in COVID, or tap you from 6 feet away and say, hey, what can I do to help you? unless you're working for Fanshawe, and that is exactly what we do. But by and large, that's not going to happen. But don't be afraid to ask. Even if the person you ask isn't the person with the answer, I can guarantee you that they will probably give you someone else to talk to. And if that person can't help, they will provide you with another person. So it's kind of like this wandering journey. You just never know where it's going to end up. But if you don't start by asking, you never know where that's going to go.
Sorry, can I just add one thing? You reminded me there, Rebecca.
That's great.
When you're going to ask for help, make sure it's you asking for the help, because I've also had a couple of times where parents have written me about their students who are coming, or their children who are coming to Canada, and that's not the kind of connection that you want to make. You're all grown adults. You can speak for yourselves, and we're happy to talk with you, but don't have your parents looking for help on your behalf.
Yeah, and that's very true as well, because ultimately, who is going to be working every day? It's not going to be your mom or your dad or your guardian. It is going to be you. So excellent suggestion there too. At Fanshawe, we do have a couple of options to do virtual networking as well. We have our 10,000 Coffees platform, where you can be joined with a mentor. It may not be somebody actually in your industry or your program, but I'm a mentor on there. So I speak with students every single month, and I provide them either with connections that I have, or I'm happy to sit down and chat about what they're looking for. And if I can't provide them with a person, chances are somewhere on social media, we can find some sort of a virtual platform to get you plugged into where you need to go. We also have our Inspire mentorship. I think that they did a section on here as well. Amazing group of women with amazing employers. So they are not going to get you a job, but they will provide you with the connections necessary and potentially a reference to be able to get you to an actual job in the future. Always be interview ready. So if you're out there asking for help from employers, treat every single instance like you are on an actual job interview. You are always representing yourself, you're always representing Fanshawe, and you're always representing that brand of company that you're going for. So if you treat every step of your journey as an interview, it will show people that you're taking not only yourself seriously, but you're taking them seriously as well. And I can't say enough about LinkedIn. So if you do have the opportunity, if you have a LinkedIn, use it. If you don't have a LinkedIn, we do have Maya, who's our resident guru on all things LinkedIn, and I can help provide you with that link as well. Excellent, excellent answers. Does anyone want to add anything further? I think that was a really rich conversation.
My note on LinkedIn would be just to put a little message when you are connecting with somebody, why you're interested in connecting. If it's like after today's message, I did actually check LinkedIn very quickly just now. I did get a request, and somebody said that, they're from the Fanshawe panel. Love that, because it gives me context. In full transparency, I am inundated every day with LinkedIn requests from people that are often vendors. They're wanting something from me, mostly business-wise. And some of them I just don't want to connect with, but if it's a student or somebody who wants to be part of my network because they're looking for support or help, I will absolutely accept. It is just a different environment when somebody is pestering me for money out of me. That's a little bit of a different one, a different beast I don't oftentimes want to deal with every day. So
yeah, it's a very valid point there, Dan. Great. So now I'm going to kind of ask an open-ended question. So in this new post-COVID reality, what is the best piece of advice that you can give to a student when they are starting to look for work? I know it's a big one.
That's a tricky one.
Well, first, I would suggest that you do use some of the tools. Obviously, you will have taken the sessions at Fanshawe, right? So you've made sure you've got a good quality resume. Your LinkedIn profile is up to date. You've checked your social media to make sure that represents you well. Then you are reaching out for those those essential contacts, and you're using LinkedIn to maybe discover some people not necessarily in human resources to connect with. You're using the job boards, yes, to look for positions, but you're looking for them to mine what are the companies in your field that you're most interested in. which may not have current job postings right now. And that's when you're looking to create those network opportunities, etc. The nice thing is that, and by the way, I'll just mention this, there's a website in London, which is an aggregator, which is called Local Jobs Hub. That has over 3,200 jobs open right now in London. There are two that we run from here, London Manufacturing Jobs, .com and londontechjobs.ca, which both have robust numbers of positions open right now. So employers are hiring currently. They are hiring virtually. We actually have a community job fair next Tuesday afternoon from 2 to 6 p.m., which by the way, you're welcome to register for still. And that has, I think it's got 16 employers with a whole range of positions in such sectors as manufacturing, transportation, health. It has a cybersecurity company looking for penetration testers, and then actually have a couple of co-op positions posted through that job fair. So I don't want to give you the sense that just because COVID has hit, and yes, we're changing our circumstances, employers are actively hiring, and they're looking for the kind of talent that Fanshawe is producing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would add to that as well that because the world has changed significantly, there is no doubt that there's been an impact on every industry. So keeping up with those shifts, what has happened is going to be very important. I know that I saw the question earlier in the chat here about how have things been impacted, such as like media buying, programmatic media, and that it's really, really important to go into an interview and have that understanding of what has changed. So for example, we work quite heavily with retail sectors and knowing the different trends that have happened as a result. If you can speak to that, then you show that you don't just have, the generic, maybe technical skill to do a job, but you can also be that strategic person for the business to provide insights, to provide recommendations. In my world, we work with such a huge variety of clients, and all of their businesses are impacted. And I'm one step away from being an expert in those areas, but they are coming to us to say, how can we adapt to this new environment? So keeping up with the industry, knowing what has changed, what's been that impact, I think is important. And then if you are interviewing, also asking those questions in your interview. There's oftentimes in interviews where at the end, the employer will say, do you have any questions for us? That's a really great time to ask how it has impacted, to learn more there. And then for you to also bring in some of those soft skills. So again, it's not just always on the technical side. More and more things like problem solving skills are going to be very valuable to have. Conflict management skills. How quickly can you adapt to things? Do you have agility? Those are things now that matter so much, since, I don't want to, I'm going to knock on wood here. I don't want to cause any problem by me saying this, but, we might go into another lockdown. Things might change. And I need to know that with the people that I'm hiring, that they can be adaptive to that they can work through it, because we don't know what the rest of 2020 will look like. We don't know what 2021 will look like. So I need somebody who can always be fluid with their approach to work. So some of those softer skills too, bringing those in and knowing how the industry has been impacted and how those relate are going to be really important things for you to communicate to potential employers.
So Dan has an excellent point that every industry is affected differently, which is really what makes it such a difficult question, because some industries have had more work because they're producing PPE or something like that, and other industries have gone right down to nothing. So in my office, for example, we're a small office, and we were able to manage not to lay anyone off during COVID, but we did have to terminate some co-op contracts early, making sure those students still got their semester, and Fanshawe worked with them. But there's been a significant decrease in the amount of work during the shutdowns. And then all of a sudden, about 2 weeks ago, everybody wants their work again. So we're in this situation where everything's constantly changing, and it's a good point that really all we can judge on at this point is your soft skills. Are you adaptable? If things change in the future, are you going to be able to change with them?
Yeah, and if I could just give a plug as a former international student, the power of being an international student is you've been able to adjust quickly to different learning styles, different cultural dimensions, working with others, using different technology than you may have used back home. All of those are things you can share with an employer about that resilience and being able to adapt to change. So please think of the your international experience as a great value add to an employer, and don't think of it as Canadians having the advantage over you. You have an advantage, especially the more that you actually learn about how we work, etc. Then always think about the lens I always like to think of from a job seeker's perspective is, what value can you add to the organization you're approaching? What is it that you're bringing? And that international experience, that perspective, that understanding of other cultures and the impact on others is a tremendous asset, especially as many of our companies are trying to sell into your marketplaces.
Yeah, it's
I
really
love
good
that.
point. Yeah, I think it's
so
amazing.
important. Yeah, like you need to think beyond just does my work experience match the job description of what somebody's looking for? Because it is so much more than that. I would say Canada, more than other places, they're looking for a good culture fit. They're looking for those soft skills of those, those things about agility, change management, the ability to adapt. When oftentimes people will go on a maternity leave, for example, in Canada. I like seeing that on a resume because what harder job is there than being a mother? So, having those different experiences are very important, right? But it's about how you can communicate them. It's about saying, I have experience working in different markets. When I have some people who will apply a job, I might have an applicant from India who worked at an agency in India, and they worked with clients in the UK, the US, they worked in other markets in other countries. Like that experience is so valuable, and is stuff that honestly, a lot of Canadian companies, we can't find candidates that have that experience. So it's about finding what those competitive advantages are about yourself and bringing them into an interview or even onto your resume, into a cover letter. Being able to communicate that is going to be very important.
Yeah, excellent points. And I know I had a mentor once tell me that if you're dealing with somebody that has an accent, A, they know more languages than you, and B, they've probably had much richer experiences than maybe I have as being this Canadian girl only from Southwestern Ontario. So don't think of yourself, like they said, as being at a disadvantage competitively. We just need to look at things a little bit differently. And I think that that's probably the biggest strength that career services can do, is we can help you maybe change your mindset. It's not always about doing things differently. Sometimes it's about thinking about things differently and bringing out some of those positives. So last question. So after this question, I'm going to open up the chat so that you, the students, can answer some questions. I am going to start by saying, please don't ask about specific questions that have to do with your background and your experience and your program. Try to ask more general questions. I will just ask, and I'm just going to go through the chat and pick out a few. If you don't get your question answered again, I'll provide my information that you can send it to me. So the very final question would be, now that we're doing a lot of interviews virtually, are there any real differences between doing the interviews virtually and in person? And what sort of tips can you give for job seekers that are maybe doing the virtual interviews for the first time?
We've done a couple virtual interviews prior to COVID, which is forcing us to kind of go that way entirely. But the biggest thing is making sure that you are prepared for a virtual interview as well as you would be prepared for an in-person one. So for example, we did one in-person interview where the person decided to do it in a coffee shop. It was loud, we couldn't hear them, it was distracting. We wouldn't have taken someone to a loud coffee shop to do an in-person interview So we wouldn't want to do one there virtually. Dress professional, have examples of your work emailed beforehand so that you can't lay it out on the table, but everyone can have it open on their computer screen. And be on time. Try and show up early to make sure the technology is working, that you know what platform you're using. And if you're not familiar with the platform that the employer is asking for, spend some time to figure out how to use it beforehand.
Yeah, I love all those points. I think you hit the nail on the head with every single one of them. It's so important because that's your first impression. Typically, we would have people come in for an interview at our office, and the expectation would be, okay, you're there at least 10 minutes early. You're probably waiting in the lobby for people to come. You just don't have that anymore. But still try to take that mentality. So try to get onto the Zoom 5 minutes before, or whatever piece of technology they're using. Be prepared that way. This is my tips and tricks, but the benefit of being able to interview through a computer screen is you could have notes on a screen. If you have two monitors or something, like that could be a benefit to you, that advantage. Obviously, don't try to like look at somebody, then look down or look at the side. It's very important to be a little bit more strategic that way, but that's my advantage now when I give presentations. Normally I'd be standing up in front of people and I can't have notes in front of me, but I can have some of that. So putting that kind of relatively at eye level could be an advantage or an opportunity for you. One of the hardest things to do now virtually is some of that ice breaking, or how can we build a little bit of a rapport so it's not just question, answer, which, is much more difficult. I am always somebody who's quite colorful in how I present myself. So, I like to have things either like in a background or, me today in my jellyfish shirt. Some ways that, you can show some personality if there's an opportunity there. Like look at your immediate surroundings. There's only a few people with cameras on, but Sharj, sorry if I mispronounced that. But I love your setup right now. I love that you have plants. Like my co-manager, Trevor, who does a lot of my interviews, is a huge plant like aficionado. And those are things that he would probably ask you, like, oh, what's behind you? Like those are really great ways that you can show a little bit of culture, a little bit of personality. And I find that, those are sometimes good ways to start off a conversation, or, before getting into an interview, try to ask a person how their weekend was, because right now everyone is longing for human connection. And, I am a single man who lives in my apartment by myself. I loved the office environment. I got to see people, and I'm a big people person. And so now, because I don't get that, I want to have that personal connection. So when it's coming to an interview, oftentimes I find you can tell somebody, yes, meets all the technical specifications of what you're looking for in a job, but what they'll think about more and more is how you made them feel. And if you can make them feel good and that you've been able to build that rapport, you've won. The challenge, though, is in this new COVID environment and through a computer screen, it is much more difficult to do that. So try to find some of those ways. You can research people more before, if you find that somebody has something on their LinkedIn profile, if you can find out who's interviewing you, that maybe they have something about sports, or that you can make a relationship with them to try to find a way to bring that up and build that human connection. I think more than ever, that's very, very important of a factor.
Excellent. Yeah, and Robert, I'm sorry. Do you have something to add?
I was just going to say, and I really like the bottle of wine that's behind Dan. And I was going to want to.
Oh my goodness! Don't look at that. It's been a rough week.
Well, if it's still full, it can't be that bad yet, Dan.
That's true. That's true. Talk to me tomorrow when it's gone. No?
Right, there you go. So just to sort of highlight what everybody was saying, we do have tools at Fanshawe for you to be able to practice your interview skills. So it's called Interview Stream, and you can find that under the Career Services tab, or I can also happy to submit that to all of you as well. You do have access to it through your Fanshawe online account through Career Services. It gives you a chance to sit in front of a computer The computer will spit out a couple of questions for you, so you can pick the industry that you're in and the level that you're interviewing for, and it'll give you some basic interview questions for you to practice. It's absolutely eye-opening to see how bad some of us are at interviewing on camera until we've actually seen ourselves in person. I know the very first time I did that, I thought I didn't even recognize the person on the camera because I was talking with my hands and I was fidgeting and all sorts of stuff. So practice may not make perfect, but it definitely makes it a lot better than going into it blind. Career Services can also offer, we do mock interviews. So we will pretend to be the employer and ask you the hard questions so that if you fumble through some of your wording, we will make sure that you're saying things properly and that you're getting your full point across, because sometimes in our brains it makes sense, but then when we actually go to explain it, we're missing pieces of information. So we just want to make sure that going into everything that you actually are going to do it better than you thought you were going to do, and definitely not burning through opportunities by having a bad interview simply because you haven't practiced it. So now I'm going to open up the questions now. If people want to start asking some questions, and again, we can't get to them all. I'm going to pick the more general ones. And should you have any additional questions, we can certainly save the chat and answer them afterwards, okay? Okay, so here's a question for everybody from Harjit Saran. What is the scope for business marketing in Canada, specifically in London, Ontario? What are the job opportunities that students can maybe get? So I'm thinking that they're asking about maybe entry-level opportunities.
Yeah, I can take that one. I would highly recommend that people check out those groups like London Creative Network, the LEDC. There's a lot more than you might think of, and they're growing quite rapidly. Digital marketing, for example, there are probably 6 to 7 agencies that are roughly 20 to 50 people in size. So they are growing. Like, for example, I have 3 jobs that I'm hiring for currently that, I never anticipated I'd be at this point, given the impact of COVID. So very excited about that. But I would say for people too, don't narrow down too much, like to use just my example of digital marketing. There's so many other opportunities in similar fields like account management. You might find digital marketing opportunities, not just at an agency where a lot of people think about. So there's a number of large companies in the city like 3M, voices.com, which is like a tech company. Diply is another one, which was at one point in time the fastest growing internet site in the world. There is a lot more opportunity here. I think sometimes people just don't spend as much time or energy looking at all the breadth of companies and the types of services they offer, specifically for marketing. Most companies need a marketing department. So be open to looking at adjacent related businesses, because maybe that first job won't be your dream job. I know I went through many of those jobs in my career before I got to where I am now, but through it, you might be able to find connections to them. So I would even look at, say you wanted to work at Arcane as a company, look at our client roster and try to see if you can get jobs at the places our clients work with, because then those are, again, other ways to get in with them. So there's definitely a lot of opportunity, and I think we're going to keep seeing London grow. My other point on it is people are leaving Toronto. A lot of people think marketing hub is Toronto, but a lot of people are starting businesses in London, and it's a much cheaper option away from Toronto. There's still a lot of people, so I think we're going to keep seeing the tech industry grow quite heavily.
To add to that, the type of jobs that students can expect to get, I see a lot of questions coming through, people talking about their your experience in the country where you are now, and what you need to consider coming to Canada is that you need to obviously present yourself and everything you can do, but understand that if your employer doesn't quite understand everything you can do, you may be offered a position that's not as high level as what you had previously. And most employers are going to do a review after 3 months, and then they're going to see what you've produced for them and potentially give you the name of your job description to increase or your wage to increase as well. So be open to accepting experience to get that Canadian experience that might not be what you expect at the beginning, but looking for a company that you can grow into the job that you want.
Excellent. Okay, here's another question. I thought this one was rather interesting. Nowadays, many sites are offering online courses such as Facebook, LinkedIn. How valuable do employers look at for these sort of certifications?
I look at them all the time. For me, I work in such a fast-paced field, and oftentimes when I need support and I'm going to be hiring, it's because a new client came on, and that new client wants to start right away. So the more that I can bring people on that have and are familiar with some of those experiences. So, for example, Google offers a whole suite of certifications that you can get. I'm looking for those as a bare minimum. They're free for people to get, and they take probably like 4 to 6 hours to complete. But it's important for me to know that people, even if it's an entry-level position, have some of those fundamentals, those basics, because I just don't have the time when somebody is coming on board to get those. There's also different courses through things like LinkedIn, Udemy, Skillshare. I think any of those are valuable if you have the time. There's so much free stuff out there now, and put that on your resume. Put those courses on, show that you're up to date too, because a lot of things like the Google certifications I mentioned, they expire every year. And so if you can put on there that your certification is still valid, that tells me that you're keeping up with the trends and the changes in the market. And that's very valuable for me to see on a resume. Yeah, I definitely think that there's a lot of opportunity there to keep building up on your resume while you're looking for work.
So just to build on that, it's great to see both your education, but then another category, which is professional development. And that's where if you can keep that up to date constantly, that is something what I would like to call career proofing.
Yep.
In other words, it's not just now while you're in the job search mode or you're in the Fanshawe mode, it's as you graduate. That's going to help you not only with staying current, but also with your next job in your career progression. So just, by the way, I'd add another website called Lynda, which has a lot of free programming more generally than just the tech sector, which is also very helpful for people to get some free, current, relevant training.
And actually to add to that, all of you having your Fanshawe online access, you, as part of your tuition, you get access to LinkedInLearning.com.
Yeah.
So if you haven't been onto LinkedIn yet, do log on using your FOL credentials. You have access to all of the training, and it does cost people money to be able to go in there, but you've been gifted the opportunity for hundreds of free courses. I've taken a few just to sort of upgrade my skills. And as Robert says, don't think of yourselves right now as just students. You are just starting your career opportunity. I've been doing what I do for 20 years, and I still go to school for courses. I still continuously upgrade my skills so that I can stay on top of my field. So when you're a student, it's really good to get into that habit of always doing some career proof or career development on the side. Build it into your schedule. It's an investment in you. So no matter what happens to you with an employer that's outside of your control, you always know that you're kind of moving forward that way. So that was an excellent question, whoever asked that. Thank you so much. So another question. I'll throw this out to you guys too. It would depend on the industry, but how likely is it to get a part-time job in their industry? Are employers open to people with experience, but that are only able to work part-time while they're in their school?
It definitely depends on the industry. I know in our office, it doesn't work. We have clients with deadlines that are constantly changing, and we can't really manage our people resources with someone who's working part-time, and even just remembering what day someone's going to show up is past the mental capacity some days when it gets really busy. In other industries, I don't know about the other presenters, whether it's different for you.
Yeah, for us, are actually shifting some of our business model because of COVID to include more contractors. So people who will be taking on some freelance projects for us. So I wouldn't say it's like regular part-time work. Again, very similar to what Jen's saying, it's very hard for us to manage that because we are so focused on when projects come in, do we have the capacity and the work for them. So if we're able to meet with a few people who have some of those skills that we could give projects to, that's another great way. Like we've had that happen where we had somebody who their area of expertise was SEO, and we just don't have a full-time, we didn't have a full-time job for them at the time. And then, you know, when we were giving them a few projects, we got more and more work, and then we could bring them on full-time. So that was a really exciting opportunity.
Rebecca, I see a fair number of people are asking about jobs in professional healthcare and other disciplines. We're very fortunate in London, Ontario to have the only access center for regulated employment outside Toronto. What the challenge for a newcomer coming is, to what degree is your qualification recognized here to be able to practice? So that doesn't mean, though, that you couldn't get an unqualified role in healthcare, say perhaps as an orderly or another role, which doesn't require a particular qualification. But I do urge that you do look at what the requirements are before you come, because you might be able to do some online upgrading or support prior to arriving that gets you just better prepared for the local marketplace. During COVID, there has been some ability for some of the major healthcare providers to be able to bring people in with their international qualifications directly for short-term employment, which was not the case before COVID, because we had some key shortages in the healthcare area. But both in engineering, in healthcare, in being a doctor or a nurse, there are requirements, or an X-ray technician, there are requirements for Canadian qualifications or being granted the equivalence prior to you being able to provide that service. So it's an important step in your consideration, what's required in those areas, and the Access Center for Regulated Employment can assist you with that determination.
Excellent. I did not know that, Robert. Thank you for that piece of information. I learn something new every time I do these things. So that's an excellent resource to know. And just remember, even don't think about your part-time jobs as just whatever. So when I was in school, I worked part-time at Tim Hortons for a really long time. So instead of me just saying I made coffee and donuts, I served customers, I started looking at what the opportunities it was presenting to me. So now I can say I'm good at conflict resolution, because people aren't very nice to people behind the counter sometimes. So I really learned how to not be offended by people and maintain professionalism at all times, no matter what people were saying to me. I had the ability to juggle multiple priorities. So not only did I show up for all of my shifts on time, I stayed the entire shift. I was studying for exams. I was keeping up good grades. So there's a lot of transferable skills that you can gain from every single part-time job, no matter what industry it is. So even if you're working at Tim Hortons, but you're actually trying to go into more of psychology background, definitely take those transferable skills that you learn from each position. Plus you're going to have references. I keep saying references, they're so valuable here in Canada, and most of the time international students don't come with any for obvious reasons. That's why the volunteering, the taking part-time positions, those sort of things, it's really important to start building that network. And even networking. With networking, you can't just go to one networking event and that's it, and hope that people will remember you. You do need to show up multiple times and show that you are actually reliable and that you're invested in yourself and interested in hearing about that. So that was another good question. So here's another question. In the upcoming job fair, and I assume this is the virtual one that Robert told us about, what is the best way to approach representatives of the company? How can they introduce themselves, or do they just prefer getting a resume online?
In the virtual job fair, you will be able to put, when you register, you'll be able to attach your resume. You'll be able to attach what your skills and what you're looking for. Then you can request either a chat or actually a video interview with a representative of the company. And many of the companies have 2 or 3 or 4 more people in their booths. So I would suggest that's a very good way for you to actually practice, using the technology of a virtual job fair, but also to connect with an employer in the field that you're interested in. So that's why we're providing that opportunity next week.
And I know I worked virtually at one of the job booths for the last one. What I can say 100% is it is as technologically challenging from our end as it is from the job seeker's end. So I can't stress enough how much patience can play a role in this. People aren't ignoring you generally on purpose when you're in the job fair. The whole reason the employers spend time, money, and energy is to actually get in front of students and job seekers. So always think that there must be something behind the scenes that has nothing to do with you when trying to get in front of people. So I just always say be very polite and don't be angry about things going wrong, because you also want to show them that when things go wrong, just like when I was being yelled at Tim Hortons, that I'm not going to yell back, that you're going to be the one that will show them how to be calm under pressure, so that when you say on your resume, I can stay collected under pressure, you actually can, and you're not just saying that. And Tim Hortons actually probably taught me more about life than any other job I've ever had, just FYI.
Yeah.
So here's a good question. How or at what point should we present references? And can they only be from Canadian people, or can they be from anywhere?
I personally prefer to receive the references after an interview. Just having read a resume, I'm not going to call references. I would make that call after I've spoken to someone personally. And to leave that information with us after the interview or to send it by email, that's all fine. It does not have to be someone who's Canadian or someone who's local, but it does have to be someone who can speak to your personal work. So if I call a reference and they can't remember who you are, that's not a good reference. So it's got to be someone that can speak to, is familiar with you and can speak to what you've done. And also someone that speaks English, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. And we also teach students that when you are submitting resumes, it's just your cover letter and your resume that you're sending in without being solicited or asked for it. References should always be on their own separate page and should only be handed out when you're requested to do so. Because the information on those reference sheets aren't actually your information. They are the information of the person who is being willing to provide your information on your behalf, but you don't need the general public having access to that information. It should only go to the person that you're actually interviewing with. All right, so we've got a couple more minutes, so I will look for one last question before I open it up. So here's an interesting one that maybe you guys might know. Can a person manage to both work in a company as well as do a startup?
Mm-hmm. Aha. Well, the answer is yes. And by the way, Fanshawe has a very interesting service called Leap Junction that can help people explore their business idea. The only question I would have is Canadian immigration does not see working in a startup at the moment on your own startup as Canadian experience. So just be cautious a little bit of that in terms of, and that's at this point in time, especially when you're looking at later on, if you're looking at permanent resident status. It's an important distinction. They don't look at being self-employed at the moment as being eligible. So it would be important for you to have maintained the other employment for longer term immigration purposes. So I'm sorry to be providing that level of detail, but it's an important consideration for many.
Yeah. An additional consideration is how your startup impacts where you're currently working as well. Because someone who's trying to do a startup in the same field where they're working is a huge red flag. So we're not interested in training someone so that they can leave and then use the work that we've trained them up on to not be bringing income into our company. So if you're wanting to work for someone else and also do a startup, then you may look at doing something that's similar, but not exactly the same. For example, in architecture, if you're working in the architecture office, but you want to start a construction company, we're not directly competing against each other. So that's far easier to do. Whereas if you want to work for us and then start up your own architecture company, that's not something that we would be willing to entertain.
We have that exact same thing. We have non-compete clauses as part of our contract. So again, if somebody wanted to start an agency that they're working at our agency, we wouldn't, that wouldn't be okay. That said, we have to use Jen's example. We have also had team members who wanted to learn digital marketing skills. That's what they want to be their full-time job. But then on the side, they started like a sustainable water bottle program. And they used and applied some of their digital marketing skills to their business, which was great. The only thing I would caution too is if that side project or your entrepreneurial efforts are taking away from your full-time job, that's where employers also might take issue. You know, if you're not able to work the full hours or that, that's going to become a problem. But I know for us, if you have those side projects, as long as they are, they can be adjacent but not exactly the same, we typically don't have any problem with that.
Right. And just to add, many companies have staff policies which indicate that you have to declare whether or not you have any other employment or self-employment. So just be cautious of always be straightforward with your employer about your situation.
Excellent. So I want to thank all of the students for sending in all of the amazing questions. I am so sorry I couldn't get to all of them, but again, I will provide in the chat my email address because I am more than happy if you have a question, send it my way. If I can't help you with the answer, then I will make sure it gets to the right person. So for the very last question, I actually don't have a question for our panel. I'm just going to open up the platform and say, if you have any other either pieces of advice, learning opportunities, do not do's, if you can share that with the students sort of as your parting remarks.
I'm going to make my parting remark based on something I actually saw come through on the feed, which was about coursework. So in my industry, our biggest hurdle when we're hiring international students is really understanding what you can do and understanding what we want you to do, because there's been a couple of instances where those two don't really align with each other. So there was someone who asked a question about coursework on a resume. If you can prepare a separate document that has details of your coursework for your program, it really helps the employer understand where you're coming from, because a lot of students that are international immigrants that we're hiring are coming as a student from another country and doing something slightly different at Fanshawe. So we understand what you're doing at Fanshawe, but if you have something prepared to help us understand what you were doing before that, then that's really helpful.
Great tip.
I would make my parting remark. I've seen a few comments about this around your experience not being Canadian experience and putting that on a resume. How do I communicate it? And my biggest piece of parting wisdom is your experience in your home country is incredibly valid. And I get a lot of people who are immigrants to Canada who, when we interview, they say, oh, I don't have Canadian experience, or I don't have the experience you're looking for. But I'm looking at their resume and they've worked in the same industry. It might be a different country, but your experience is valid and it is valuable. And it's important to find those ways to communicate it. Do not downplay it. Make sure that you are confident in the skills and the value that you're bringing, because quite often it doesn't give me confidence in your skill level if you're saying that it's not relevant or it's not valuable. When I'm looking at it on paper and I'm saying, this is like, I brought you in for an interview because you're matching the qualifications that we're looking for. So be confident in those skills. I think it is very, very important for you to have a good grasp on those. So when you're looking for job posts, or yeah, you're looking at job postings, if you see something that says 1 to 3 years of experience, that doesn't mean 1 to 3 years of Canadian experience. That means 1 to 3 years of experience in the skills that they're looking for. So I think that is an important thing to consider, because you do have experiences. Many of you probably have experiences from a home country that are completely relevant. As we've talked about on the panel, you can bring diverse perspectives. You have different challenges that you face in your life that you can bring forward to an employer. Bring that out. Don't just approach it from, I match the description and I have the skills. People want that more holistic viewpoint, and your experiences in your home countries matter so much.
Thank you.
And
Robert?
And just to build on that point, I'd like to think of you choosing where you want to work is just as important as the employer choosing you. So I think it's really important that you think of yourself as that valuable commodity with skills, talents, and insights, that you're choosing where you want to work. So you approach the whole process with, I have selected you, be privileged employer. I've selected you out of the many out there for me to consider working for because of your values, because of your technical prowess, because of your place in the marketplace, because of your support for staff, because you've done your homework that the company offers that. So in other words, put yourself more as, I am a valuable person with skills and I'm wanting to choose you. And it's better to apply for a few jobs very well, having networked, having really understood what they want, rather than spending a lot of time very quickly sending out not very good cover letters and resumes, etc., without really knowing what the company is looking for. So really, you are a valuable commodity. You're coming to Canada with some skills which we need. Please take that approach to your job search and you will succeed.
Excellent. At this point in time, we would probably all stand up and give you a nice round of applause, because that was absolutely amazing, very informative. I'm always grateful when employers take time out of their schedules to come and talk to us students, especially the fact that nobody is actually here in Canada yet. So I hope that the students you guys can feel the love from London, Ontario here, that we can't wait to have you here. And we just want to thank Dan, Robert, and Jen. I want to say thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to come talk with us. And just in parting remarks, if you guys need, if any of the students need any information on anything we talked about during this panel, I put my email address there. Feel free to reach out to me. I do have templates and things I can send you. I have a feeling I'm going to be overwhelmed with it, so give me a little bit of time, but I will answer everybody. And now I will hand it back over to Priyank to sort of wrap up our day.
All right. Thank you, Rebecca. And thank you all the employers. As Rebecca mentioned, we really, really appreciate all the insightful information about the employment in London, Ontario, and not just London, Ontario, but also how all the students will be able to work remotely and the tips and tricks that we have provided. Another part of the team I would love to thank is the career services, because Rebecca and the team have done an excellent job at Fanshawe Works in the last 2 days, and we hope that you found all the information helpful. And we also appreciate each and every one of you, more than 170 plus of you who have stuck till the end of Fanshawe Works. So we see that you guys are excited to come and join Fanshawe, and also have Fanshawe be part of your first journey to come in Canada. So we are really excited. And just to, in the ending remarks, I'm going to share a link in the chat here, which is for the feedback on Fanshawe Works. And we would love to hear back from you, because this makes us happy, and also let us know how we can improve for the next time of Fanshawe Works for the new students just like you. So please take part in this link that is provided in the chat box and let us know how we did and what we can improve. And you also get a chance to win $25 gift card. That's just an additional bonus. And aside from that, one last but really important information for tomorrow. All of you who are new students, we have an international welcome session early in the morning at 8:30, just like today. And there we will be talking about all the information that you need to know about International Center, about the services that college as a whole that we have to offer, things you need to be aware when you arrive here, if you are outside of country, how the programs will work and everything else in between. So please take part in the International Welcome Session. I have provided the link here as well. So once again, two different things. One is the survey that you can take part in to improve Fanshawe Works, and another is Fanshawe International Welcome Session, which is tomorrow at 8:30. So again, I really appreciate it. And we have a Darlene here from Career Services, the Director of Career Services. She would love to say some ending remarks. And before that, I've said many stuff by saying and. If I can have, I know for a lot of you, it's really late in the evening, but anyone and all of you who can turn on the camera and wave hands, we would love to take a photo showing off Fanshawe Works and the success of it and share it with other students. So I guess Darlene will take over for that, and I will end it here. Thank you, appreciate it. Yeah, you should be able to unmute.
Okay, good. I was begging Priyank. I was like, unmute me. I have something to say. First of all, I want to thank Dan and Jen and Robert again. As the director, I typically am not the one to reach out to the employers. And to be perfectly honest, my event planner was on sick leave for 3 months, and my team were so busy, I said, I'll do it. And I forgot to get your bios, so my apologies. But Rebecca, being as swift and as brilliant as she is, just made that seamless. I did listen to a lot of the events through the last 2 days. It's so nice to see so many students stay engaged the way the students of Fanshawe Works do. You know, you guys have the best sense of work ethic and tenacity and dedication and excitement that I've seen in students. And we're so super excited to welcome you to Fanshawe when you finally get to get here. For those of you that are away, I hope that everything you learned over the last 2 days was valuable, that you met the awesome people of our team, that you met the wonderful employers that participated, and the alumni panel yesterday. You heard about how we work with students and how successful they are when they graduate. And it's these employers that are sitting in front of us today that hire you guys. So take every piece of advice they gave you and make it a reality. Study hard. Stay in touch, reach out to us whenever you want help, and we just can't wait to meet you. And a shout out to Rebecca for moderating that panel. She did a great job, didn't she, everybody? So let's do our Fanshawe Works wave, everybody. Say, we'll see you in London.
Thank you, everyone.